Change that dial. You're now listening to Debate Talk Free Radio.
Peace and greetings to you. This is Amuna Yisrael, affectionately known as the First Lady of Debate Talk for you. I have enjoyed coming to you week after week, season after season, growing together, speaking about the difficult topics, investing the energy, time, and effort with our brothers and sisters on the panel. Today, I would like to come to you with an opportunity for you to invest in something that I've been working on and that's near and dear to me. It's called the Yummy Cottage. You can learn more about it at www.gofundme.com/the Yummy Cottage. We're currently fundraising so that we can get it off the ground, and your help would be appreciated. Once again, www.gofundme.com/the Yummy Cottage. Check the link in the box and hope to hear from you soon.
Absolutely. So today we're going to look at whose law are we keeping? And I'm sure some of you have been looking at that flyer thinking, what on earth are they talking about now? Of course we are all keeping Torah. What else could we possibly be keeping? But the fact is that sometimes we are attributing some of our behavior to Torah, and in fact we are keeping the laws or the traditions of men. Now, ready for that, right? Think about it. How many times did we have to be warned time and time again not to take on the traditions of the cultures round and about us? There's a reason for that. The reason for that is that we never existed in a vacuum, although we like to believe that because Yisrael is set apart, that it meant that Yisrael was in a bubble. But we weren't. We always shared culture areas, and we had to be constantly reminded not to participate and partake in all of these other behaviors that we were seeing, not to copy them, not to adopt them, and not to incorporate them into our lives. So we're going to look at some of the more popular things that we attribute to adhering to the Most High, when in fact we may very well simply be duplicating some of the behaviors that we observed and adopted due to our attempts to culturally assimilate. We also can look at the fact that sometimes we just wanted to be like the other kids. We look in Samuel, where Samuel is so, listen, we want to be like the other nations. It's not cool to have just you. We want to have a man king because everybody else has a man king, and we want to be like everybody else. And while our judges and our prophets and our wise men are saying, listen, that's not a good idea, you don't want to do that, we're saying we absolutely do. We like it. We don't want to be set apart. We don't want to be different. We don't like being a peculiar people unto you. We want to blend in. We want to be seen as powerful. We want to be seen as influential. We want to have a king that displays all of our wealth and our blessings. And this, we walk around saying that we are the blessed kingdom. So we want proof and evidence of this the way everybody else has one. We want someone who's going to physically lead the charge in these military spaces. And so we decided that the Most High wasn't enough for us, and we adopted other behaviors and tried to emulate other people. And as Amuna likes to say, and Amuna has said this many times, and correctly so, that we are still those people. We are still those people, and we say it every day in many of our conversations when we say we are the people of the book. Being the people of the book means that what we see is still nigh unto us. We are still doing these things and duplicating these behaviors. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring in the panel, and we're going to explore some of these traditions, some of these cultures, some of these customs, some of these philosophies and ideas that we have Judaized or Hebrewized or poured chocolate over and adopted as our own, and try to get the community at large to participate in simply because it is familiar and fun in some instances. So, without further ado, I believe that most of my panelists here, we have Sister Malaka is joining us, although she's feeling under the weather, and we appreciate her being here. I believe both of the Imas are here, and Only Love will be joining us a little bit later. Some of you may have seen on social media that we had an event I'm going live, by the way, so I'm paying attention to the audience and paying attention to you as well, the listening audience. Recently, we had an event in Brooklyn welcoming the sisters in the area who could come out, and we had a good turnout. We had a lot of praise, a lot of prayer, a lot of testimonies, a lot of love, and a lot of sisterhood. And one of the things that I thought was amazing, and I'm sharing this with you because you should know, one of the things that was amazing is that everyone was from a different Knesset or a different space, and it wasn't about who our faith leaders were. It was about who we are as sisters and about our common goal to be righteous women and to be pleasing to our Creator. And we didn't play turf wars, and we didn't argue over names. We didn't argue over whose pronunciation was what. We discussed what we needed to do as daughters, sisters, women, wives, mothers, and elder women in the community. And it was a beautiful thing. And that is what the law and our Creator and everything else requires of us, because that's order. That's the love of the children of the Most High. So, again, without further ado, Ima Naami led that. This time, I know I usually speak to the panel first and then go to our Imas last. But first, may the Most High go before us as we have this, our last segment of the calendar year. And Toda to Sal for allowing us this time on his platform, because we had a really, really energetic weekend. We probably aren't going to go over long this time. Our sisters aren't feeling well, and I'm really appreciative and grateful that they showed up because, again, for the love of the people, we show up. So, Ima Naami, can you open us up in a really, really brief prayer just to bless the conversation? Again, we're going to try to keep it within a reasonable time because we have a lot of projects that we're really trying to get out. And but this last episode is super important, and we again show up for the people. So, Ima Naami, can you bless this segment as we go and try to reconcile ourselves back into the appropriate use and understanding of the law and the love of the Most High?
Actually, Muna Ami's not here yet. We have Yehudi here though.
Ima Yehudi.
Hey.
Hallelujah.
Yes.
Yehudi, would you do that for me? Could you give us the open blessing?
Hallelujah. Thank you, King of Kings, Master of Masters, Lord Almighty Yah. Heavenly Father, we come together today as sisters, and we thank Brother Sal for allowing us to have Under the Palm and the founder, Minyana, and co-host, Imuna, and all the sisters, and I hope Malaki, is I pronouncing her name right? And Malaka? Hope she feels better. Malaka? Okay. I'm trying to pronounce your name right, dear. That you feel better. I'm sorry, I'm bad with names. But it's sincere in my heart. I hope you feel better. I know how it feels being under the weather, as they say. But I ask you, Almighty Heavenly Father, that we come together in unison. We work together in unison. And the things that come out of our mouth, let you guide us. Let you motivate us in all that we do tonight in all of our lives every day. I ask you to bless this conversation. I ask you that people open up their minds and their hearts, that they recognize true Elohim is the Most High, or Elohim, that He is our Savior. He's the only one. And later I'll read a passage, if I'm so asked, for Jeremiah. That would be very, very significant for this time of year. But I ask you, Almighty Yah, in your name, for us to have calmness and patience. And we work together in the things that we're saying, and we learn from one another. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
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 Okay, so with that, we're going to go ahead and open up the conversation and explore some of these traditions, some of these customs, and some of these behaviors that we are still practicing now. And sometimes we justify that as we are looking to fulfill the expectations of the Creator when, in fact, that's not what's happening at all. So in what ways is that the case? Sister Malaka, since you're here, we appreciate you. Do you want to open up the conversation for us?
Okay, I will. All praise to the Most High.
Yahweh, our strength and our power. And I just want to say shalom to my sisters on the panel and to the Ima Yehuda that's on the panel. Thank you for that prayer. I apologize if my voice is sounding a little funny. I'm fighting off a cold. I refuse to lay down. So I'm fighting it off, but, I'm going to rest.
Well, hallelujah, dear. Yes, hallelujah.
So thinking about this topic, I've been thinking about this topic all weekend and meditating on it. And I was thinking about the ways in which I've found some of my sisters to be struggling in this walk with being told things like women aren't allowed to study Torah, or women aren't allowed to read publicly Torah, or women aren't allowed to speak in the presence of men in Torah, and the list goes on and on and on. And what I have discovered is that there are a lot of things that people teach as law that are actually what we would call halakha. They are the argument of sages, Jewish sages, who interpreted law, interpreted Torah. And I find that there are some misunderstandings where these interpretations are actually being presented to some of our sisters as the law. And if the sister isn't studying for herself, she's not getting into Torah for herself, she may find herself being suppressed, oppressed, subjugated, crushed, and darn near run out of the faith. What I would offer up tonight as my opening statement is that it's important as a sister, for anyone, but for the sisters I'm speaking to right now, it's important for us to study the Torah and to know indeed what is law, so that we can indeed discern what is not law, what is halakha, what is man-made offerings, interpreting the law. I'll give you, I was going to give an example of halakha. An example of halakha would be that a woman can't read Torah, that she can't study or can't read Torah. That is not in the Torah. That was a thought that was perpetuated by a Jewish sage. I believe his name was Rabbi Eliezer, and he taught that, and it was widely spread among Judaism, and I don't know how it made its way into the Hebrew walk, but it's here. And I will close my opening statement with this thought. Many of the sages interpreted law concerning women based on their perspective of the nature of woman. And that's where we get a wrench. That's where we get a wrench, because depending on how that rabbi perceived the nature of women, he would come up with reasons why women should or should not do a certain thing and call that law. And so I want to put a pin in that, and I'm going to come back and talk about that maybe a little bit later. With that, I yield.
Thank you, Toda, for that. Absolutely. We find that there are other people codifying behaviors and ideas for our community that happened long before we began to organize in the ways that we see that we're organizing now, and trying to reclaim and recreate and rebuild our kinship ties and our heritage and the like. And you brought up that we have these Jewish sages that are codifying things in this way. And even before that, we have Greek and Roman philosophers who are layering their worldview on top of this growing Hebrew ministry that's happening in that space during the Hellenistic period. There's already an existing philosophy. There's already an existing religion. And this competing Hebraic idea wasn't allowed to take root, especially not without very staunch opposition. This idea that they are more established, that their religion, we call it mythology now, but for them this was religion, that their religion had an older worldview, that it was an established worldview, that they already had things that were codified in their space, and this Hebraic movement was considered new and problematic, and it was an issue for their philosophers of the day who were invested in their narrative. And we find a little bit of that happening now also. Sister Ashanti, what are your thoughts on that?
Shalom. Debate talk for you under the palm. Shalom to the sisters in my whole. Thank you, Sal, for this platform once again. All praise to the Most High. Yeah. You said a mouthful, and I agree with everything you said. Also, what Sister Angela said, very valid points. As someone who intricately has studied what laws we actually think we're following when we say we follow the laws of Moshe, I have a great deal to say about this, but for my opening introduction, I'll say that anything that you find in the Bible, if it doesn't go back to the Torah, the law of Moses, the first 5 books, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, if it doesn't go back there, you have to question where it came from, because these things don't pop up out of thin air. Sister Angela Malacca made a great point about some of these rabbis and sages. Well, if you look, I'm a New Testament believer and Old Testament, so, in the New Testament you see Messiah going up against the Pharisees a lot. Well, the thing is, where do the Pharisees come from all of a sudden? We have this jump from the Old Testament where we don't see them mentioned at all till now we have Pharisees, Sadducees, we got Essenes, we got Ebionites, we got Nazarenes. Where did all these sects come from? SECTS. And so when you start looking at the secular historical information, you see that around 146 BCE, before Common Era, you have prophecy being fulfilled with Alexander the Greek. He came in pretty much, I think, around like 326, 325 BCE, and he just did some damage to where he said everybody around was going to follow the culture and the ways of living, the political parameters of the Grecians or the Greeks. And so if you notice that Israel, every time we went into captivity, or either we were around some of the other nations, like you said, we were told not to assimilate. We were supposed to tear down their altars, tear down their groves. We were not supposed to take on their ways. But Alexander the Greek imposed a lot of his ways on Israel. There was a lot of compromise, and there was a lot of threat of death. Now, some people did not want to die, and they took on the ways and the culture of the Greeks. And so the Pharisees, I'll circle back to that. The Pharisees, they come along in the first book of Maccabees, chapter 2 and chapter 7. You'll see that they were called the Assyrians. And they were like the ones I see with like a second big compromising of Israel. So once you come out of Babylon, you're influenced by that. Once you come into the area of the Greeks, you're influenced by that. So we have taken on the ways of the Greeks and the Romans. Prophecy has been fulfilled. We have totally been influenced by the Greeks. And once you've been doing something for so long, you think it's yours. You never question the origins. So a lot of, if you study what the Greeks and the Romans had, the Greeks, like you said, have philosophers. You have Aristotle, you have Plutarch, and you'll see some of the philosophy. Even Paul was going against them in Acts chapter 18. So that's what I'll say for my beginning introduction here. So I'm definitely ready to bring some more information out. I'm ready to bring some resources. I'm ready to hear the audience on this. And this is just encouragement for us people to really, especially us people over here who are in America, who have had ancestors brought up over here, and we got to ask, after they were let free, what culture did they assimilate into and take on? And with that, I yield. Praise the Most High.
Hallelujah. Okay, so that, I mean, Ashanti, and we have Malaka bringing out some great points. We have Jeremiah coming through in a little bit. I know everybody who's on the listening or who's on the call and out there in the listening audience, and possibly the ones that were watching me live are very curious about where we're going with this. If you have already joined us and you're on the line, remember you must press 1 in order to join the conversation. For the rest of you who are just tuning in, wondering what are they talking about, today's topic is whose laws are we keeping? To join the conversation, please dial 319-527-6239 and remember to press 1 to join the conversation. Amuna, what are your thoughts on this?
All praises be to the Most High, the Holy One of creation. Giving thanks and praise for this day and for the opportunity to come before you once again. Welcome, and thanks for having me. My computer just started bugging out all of a sudden, and so I was listening right before I came on. It just started playing automatically. But in short, I will keep it short as I hear how the conversation unfolds. Whose laws are we following? I think it's a little bit of everyone under which we have been captive or held captive or subjugated. And it seems like, like keepsakes we take from this culture and that culture, and it would take for us to, objectively take a look at what we're doing and be willing to follow the trail, so to say, to see where we end up and determine whether or not that is something beneficial and whether or not it's something that we have carried along the way. And so whose laws are we following? I would say a little bit of everybody and not enough of the right laws. So with that, I'll relinquish the mic as I continue to make the babies quiet down a little bit. I'll relinquish the mic.
Hallelujah. Our praises for the babies. We went to the event that we had the other night, last night, with all the sisters gathered. We were very blessed by the presence of the young ones coming behind us. Hallelujah. Because when you talk about Israel, very often you think of the men. You think of the big and the burly, as someone called them. But you think of all the masculine energy, and you forget that there are women and children that make up our nation. And so it's great to be able to see the women participating. It's great to see how the men are in larger, more visible numbers embracing their women, including their women. And because, as we say all the time, without the masculine and the feminine principle, there is no creating going on. And so, hallelujah for the children. So, sister, no, we have no more sisters right now, right? Okay, Ima Yehudi, what are your thoughts on the topic, on tonight's topic? What gems do you have for the daughters this evening?
I will say this, because this is going to be a long process here. I'm not going to say as much. I'm going to cut it short because there's so many intelligent sisters on the panel. I thank y'all for that, and that we can come together. You know, we do have a little bit of other culture, but then we have to think back if we do the research. There are a lot of cultures emulated us, our ancestors, and it's true to form today. You have to be true to yourself and be honest. And you have to live what you know. You have to give that example, no matter what level of understanding you're at. Because, I remember my grandmother would say, you're accountable for what you know, not what you don't know. And you're responsible to live that life, ever you know from the scriptures. And whatever the law that you gravitated, but there is a universal law that's to all nations. See, people don't realize this law, some of these laws are not just exclusive to Israel. It's for all nations. We're supposed to be like priests. We're supposed to be the example. No matter how sometimes we're split on different things with the Knesset and the camps and who's Messianic, who's not. Because I used to be a Messianic. I started out that way. And I wanted to grow more. I wanted to find out. So I hope the sisters could, really dig deep in consciousness of what are they really believing and what do they really know. And do we show correction in the process of us learning? Because we all have something to offer. But like you said, and I'll cut it short, are we really, truly following the laws? And it's been proven we're not following all of them, and it's a hodgepodge. So with that, I will turn over the mic, and I will speak later. Shalom.
Shalom. Oh, shalom. Emma, you brought out a very hot topic there. You put a little fuel into the fire with the idea. We do have these issues between who is Messianic and who isn't, emphasizing that part of the text. And it evolves in this sort of East Coast, West Coast, unnecessary discussions, I find. And so there's a bit of that. There's a bit of this discussion about my understanding takes privilege and precedence over wherever you are in the book on both sides. And it's not necessarily conducive to conversation or to getting us to this space where we are looking to the Most High, looking to the Creator and putting Him first and saying all these other things have to be to your glory. And if it doesn't line up in that way, then this is not a conversation that needs to be had in the way that we are. In some cases, putting our investment over what the Most High has asked of us. And there is some of that. And then we do have to wonder, where does that come from? Where does this come from? Why do we start to emphasize? Whose idea was it that we have to draw these lines in the sands and turn on each other in this way to discuss points of view and vantage and the like?
Well, let me make a quick point. I don't mean to interrupt you before I forget. I don't mean to put that as an excuse. See, for me, I've always, I wanted and desired compassion, but with wisdom towards my people. Love Yah first, myself and whomever, and we'll show. I don't have any issues with people who say I believe in the Messiah. I don't have any argument for that. Because it's always something we can learn. Even though I can say, well, I was taught this way. Why did I come out of it? One day I'll explain. But I'm not angry about it, nor I'm angry at the person who says, I believe the whole book. Because I see where they're understanding. But do I argue to the point of where they're understanding? No. Because I've heard some sisters talk about the historical aspect of what they've learned is right on point. Very intelligent. If we can learn, all of us collectively, it's not to be judgmental on a level, a personal level doesn't necessarily mean they're above, below, sideways, across from you. It's just at that point in their life what they understand. And it's the heart. I'm just simplifying. So go ahead. I'm sorry. I'll relinquish the mic.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I'm glad that you brought those things out. Although we're not going to really be able to, or we shouldn't go into those types of those type of political kind of assignments right now. But it is interesting.
That's why I said let's put it away. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying let's.
I understand. I appreciate it, but it's
love.
Good to know because we're going to, in all of our conversations, and that's what's really great about our Debate Talk for You platforms, that we have this balance, that we can have those that are messianic and those that are less so, or strictly in the Tanakh portion, sit at a table and have a conversation without wearing that on our breasts or on our sleeves, saying, "Well, I'm here to rep the Messianics, and I'm here to rep the," and we don't play those politics, which I love about TRC and UTP, because it shows that Israelites, since time immemorial, have had variances on how they approached doing what they needed to do for the Most High. There was always this type of variance, but what's good to see is that we are able, at least sisters in both the TRC panels and the UTP panels, are able to say, this is not about me. And that's amazing, and I appreciate that. So what we're talking about now, the idea of the law. It's okay that we had to kind of visit this Messianic and Tanakh conversation, because we find that in the Catholic or Christian sections that because of these ideas about law and how they have been touched on by all of these foreign spaces, the Greeks, the Romans, the Canaanites, and the Amorites, whoever we shared culture area with, how they came into culture contact with our laws has influenced us. So it's great, especially when we're talking about the Messianic lens, because like you said, there's a great deal of scholarship around what the Greeks and the Romans were doing in that time and in that space, and why they would have been invested in interfering with this Hebraic emergence that's happening in the Hellenistic era. And so it's good that this is happening. People tend to not be as concerned about that, and then there isn't an answer from that side of the community when Christians come in and have a question about why did someone in one of the epistolaries say whatever the case might be. And so it's great that we do have that kind of well-rounded access to information. There are people that are interested in all parts of the book and all of the deuterocanonical books as well. So we do have what the outsiders would call scholarship, and whether or not that's to their standard is, of course, immaterial to any of us. But we do have our own investments in understanding how the law gets reimagined and represented in different spaces, even if it's just internal. So, again, this is going to be a great conversation, a very interesting conversation, as the listening audience participates in. And I predict later when it's done again on YouTube and we read the comments, so many people will be able to come in from their worldview, from their vantage points, from their experiences, and what they have learned either from the pulpit or from their personal interactions with the Most High and with the material or with the text. These are all valuable experiences that shape how we have this, what we call our personal walk with the Creator. And so as this conversation continues, it'll be very interesting to see how it develops with all of these factors in mind and coming into play. Sister Amuna, I'm going to bring the conversation back to you if the children have settled down and we can borrow you again. What are your thoughts on how the law gets reimagined, reinterpreted, and in some cases completely dismissed? We find that Christians have a totally different relationship with the law. Some of them believe that the law isn't necessary anymore. Do you think that something of the Roman Greco worldview influences this idea of not having or of creating a narrative where the law has to have less weight and something else must have more weight?
I mean, definitely. You know, we have to keep in mind that the trek that we have taken as a people, the experience that we have gone through, the stripping away for those who are in the West of a culture and a connection to the text, we have to remember that the person or the people group who gave us back the text to a certain degree, we're going to more often than not process what we're seeing and reading through that worldview. You understand what I'm saying? So even though they gave it back to you, unless you go into not only the text but the culture and the surrounding cultures to understand from a different perspective, you are going to process it almost the same way they did. So, you know, there's quote, whitewashing, end quote, and then there's blackwashing. And to a certain degree, you know, a lot of us have been taught and are still doing the exact same thing. We just shaded it in a little bit, you know. And so this conversation would make many uncomfortable because it's going to bring a lot of things into question. See, there are things that we are comfortable with letting go, and then there are things that we're not so comfortable with letting go, you know. And so I find on my own personal journey that truth, you have to be willing to step out there, because if you don't, you can just be carrying something along because it's comfortable. You know, and so we see the whole Chex Mix. We've heard it before. You know, I don't like peanuts. You know what I'm saying? I really don't like, brand that much. And so we start picking out the stuff we don't like, and this is where we get all of these factions from, all of these different sects, because those who like something, they gravitate to one area, and those who don't, they gravitate to another. And the Most High is one. And so when we look at this, it's evident that we are following someone else's laws because the law of the Most High is one. So the law of the Most High is one, and we are all connected in theory with the Creator, then our understanding should be one. Like the Torah doesn't have private interpretation unless we're leaning on our own understanding, right? And so this is I could tell already, it's going to be and is a touchy conversation because it's going to challenge the things that we have been taught. And I'm not that certain at this point that many of us are ready to venture off into these waters, if you can understand what I'm saying. So hopefully I conveyed my thoughts on that, and I continue to listen to the conversation and share where I can. I relinquish the mic.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a very touchy area. It is now and always has been a very touchy area. And so, again, I agree with you. We're going to proceed very cautiously and try to stick as much to the issue at hand and, again, try to stay neutral and away from anything that could be too intimately inflammatory, especially in these spaces where everyone become very protective of their investments. So, Sister Shanti, I get the feeling that you have something to say, and I love that. So I would love to hear your thoughts on some of the things that have been brought out and and kind of the direction we're going in. What are your thoughts about the ideas that maybe the Messianic worldview and not to say the Messianic worldview and the Christian worldview have too many similarities, but that because there was this Greco-Roman influence during the Hellenistic era, that the Christian faction may have a different worldview, although there is a Messianic overlap agreement. Although that agreement may be in space, there's other things that influence why the law remains important to Messianic Torah-centered Israelites and less so with the Catholic Christian churches.
Yeah. I will say this, Mayana. The modern day churches in Christianity, what is pretty much Christendom, is the doctrine or teachings of the church fathers. The church fathers come on, pretty much during the 3rd and 4th century A.D. And those church fathers, you'll hear them say, "Oh, well, Ignatius is one of the students or disciples of John the Baptist." And I say, okay, well, if these church fathers were students of John the Baptist, then what did John the Baptist teach? Why is it so different? What modern Christianity teaches so different from what we see in the Gospels about John the Baptist? Fathers have definitely taken on a lot of the Greek philosophical thinking, mindset, and rhetoric. I want to say it's prophecy being fulfilled. If you turn to Deuteronomy, let me see. Deuteronomy 32, verse 21. I'm reading from the ISR. They made me jealous. This is the Most High speaking here. They made me jealous by what is not El, by what is not a deity, a mighty one, a power or energy, right? They provoked me with their worthless matters, but I make them jealous by those who are no people. I provoke them with foolish nations. And so what's happened is the prophecy being fulfilled right before our eyes. The oracles or the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High Yahweh that was put into the children of Israel's hand, was given to these people to provoke us to come back. to the Most High, because what happens is, the mindset of Israel, like you said, since Samuel, we want a man king. We want a king like everybody else. And the thing is, if you don't be careful, the Most High will give you what you start wishing for. And that's what happened when the children of Israel said, we don't want your way. We think the grass is greener on the other side. Even though you gave us water to have our grass green on this side, we think it's green on the other side. It might be green because they painted it, but we think it's better. So it's just prophecy for being fulfilled right before our eyes. So that's what's happening. The Father uses whom he wants to get his people's attention. And right now, that's what's going on. I yield for now.
Well, I just got word that Ima Naomi is in the house, so let's welcome her to the conversation. Ima Naomi, we are talking this evening about whose laws are we keeping? And the daughters and Ima Yehudi have been investigating, interrogating, and discussing how the influences of other cultures have crept its way into our contemporary adherence to the laws and instructions and commandments of the Creator. What are your thoughts on that?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, right. It's true. These influences have crept into our practices, our customs, simply because we've been part of these other people. This is part of our punishment, that it would be that way. If you remember, part of our punishment is that we would serve other gods that wouldn't serve gods that our fathers did not. So this is part of that, and it's certainly crept into our culture. Good thing about all of this is that we've somehow managed to hold on to some of the things that were inherent in our culture, without even understanding sometimes what it was all about. We seem to have some habits and some customs that we didn't quite know where they came from before we came into the understanding of being Israelites, but they were there nevertheless. And this has always been a good thing. So, like I said, I do believe you're catching me sort of cold because I was actually looking at something else while I was talking to you, and I'm not at home. But that's fine. Certainly, these other influences have come into the way we view things, the way we worship, and whatnot. In fact, some of them are still prevalent in what we do. In that, particularly in the Black Jewish way and in the Messianic and Christian practices that we continue to practice. A lot of times we find that even coming into the Lord, coming to the understanding that because they were of such long-standing practice, that we find it very hard to drop them sometimes, and that sometimes creates a dilemma for people who are trying to adopt and embrace this culture. It certainly does create a dilemma. It leaves them sort of tottering, as you say, on the fence sometimes, because they're not quite sure whether they should just completely drop the things that they were comfortable with or the things that they were used to, and pick up the Israelite culture, or whether or not they should just, whether they should hold on to some of these things. So I certainly do think that certainly our experiences have influenced us to a great deal.
Sort of that. Absolutely.
Hey, all praises to the Most High. I forgot about that.
Hallelujah. We can't forget about that. Malaka, how you doing over there? How you feeling, sis? You all right?
I'm hanging in here. I'm with my sisters, so I'm good.
That's right. We're going to heal you up with the love of the Most High. We got you, sis. Get you some ginger tea and some lemon. What are your thoughts on what you've heard so far about the influences of alien cultures and the way it impacts our worldview, how it differs from the Catholic and Christian worldview? What are your thoughts on what you've heard so far?
Well, it brought something to the forefront of my mind that happened to me as just kind of a personal experience. And then so I'm going to share that real quickly, and then I'm going to tell you the point of sharing that. But basically, when I came into this walk, I came in through a fasting period. I went on a long fast, and during that fast, I was praying really about Black people all over the diaspora, and I was really calling out to the Most High, and I was saying, why are we suffering everywhere? Why are we oppressed everywhere? What did we do? Why are you angry with us? Because it was just in my heart that he maybe he was angry with us. I couldn't shake that thought. And during this fast, a question came to me. I think I was about 13 or 14 days into the fast, and a question just kind of dropped into my mind. And the question was, in what ways have my faith been informed by white male European agendas? Now, I never thought about that ever before, and I've been in the church all my life, was a minister, worked with women in the church. Never had I considered that thought. And after like 13 or 14 days of this fast, that question just dropped into my mind, and I couldn't shake the question. And as I began to explore that question, I began to come into a deeper and more accurate understanding of who I was and why some things existed in the lives of people of color. And I shared that to say that I think sometimes we compartmentalize our experience on this faith walk. I've heard some people say, well, I came out of the church and I just threw all that away, and I just, I have nothing to do with that, and I got out of Babylon, and I understand that thinking, and I can relate to that. However, I look at my walk as a walk, as a continuous path, a journey that I'm on, where the Most High is continuously taking me closer to Him. And I think about Jeremiah 6:16, and I want to read that real quick. It's the King James Version. It says, "Thus saith the Lord, stand ye in the ways and see, and ask for the old path, where is the good way, and walk therein, and ye shall find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk therein." And I think about my walk with the Most High as a path. And I'm seeking to return to the ancient ways. I'm seeking to come to a more accurate understanding of how He wants to be worshipped and what He wants for my life. And so I don't regret any of the experiences that I've had or any of the beliefs that led me to the place where I am now, because they have led me to the place where I am now. And so I don't fear saying, oh, well, I'm Messianic, because I understand that as I walk on this path and return to the ancient ways, I may become informed in some other way regarding that belief and how that belief is to actually guide me or lead me or be involved in my faith. So I'm saying that just to say we don't have to fear. If we are seeking to serve the Most High, if we are reading the Torah, if we are seeking to uphold the laws, the statutes, and the commandments, and we're doing this with a pure heart, we should be able to trust that He's going to reveal to us what is right, what is the ancient path, where we're to be going, and what we're to be doing. And so I say that just to kind of say, for those who might be feeling a little uptight, whose shoulders might be up to their ears right now because you're not sure where we're going, with this conversation, I want to say relax, take a deep breath, and just rest in the knowledge that the Most High is leading you. He said He's our shepherd, so He's leading us into truth. He's leading us into knowledge. He's leading us into understanding. How we've been impacted by the various captivities, we will be unpacking that for some time. We don't even understand how we are personally being affected by the captivities that we haven't even experienced, the Babylonian captivity, how it's still influencing me today. It's going to take time to unpack that. I'll share this one little thing. I had no idea that the European male agenda informed my idea and perspective on black men for many years. Did not know that. Did not know that. So there are some mistakes that I've made in my past that were based on my understanding at the time that I was living through those experiences. But as I learn and I grow and I continue to walk with the Most High, I become more aware. If it's possible to become more awake, I become more awake. And so I don't have to continually recreate those experiences. I can learn from the mistakes. So my point in sharing that is maybe we will discover that we are being affected by captivity still, that we are forming worldviews based on inaccurate information or a wrong belief system. We may find that, we may discover that, and we have to look at this as a journey so that we won't be so devastated that we don't have the courage to face what we're learning and make the necessary changes. And with that, I'll yield.
Hallelujah. I think that you brought out something very, very important. The way that these ideas creep into our consciousness to the extent that we don't even realize that we are doing it until we are confronted with it. We did a series, Muna and I, we did a series on the miseducation of the so-called black women. Most of you know that if you spent any time with us or with Israel in general, that we take issue with this designation black. And so even if you watch our video discussions of it, we spent all day going so-called black and making sure that we were very parenthetical, put things in quotations when we come across language we find problematic. But in any event, we were looking at the miseducation of the so-called black woman, of the melanated woman, and her experiences with this with feminism and how it gets presented and reframed and kind of rebranded through time. So we found a document called what was it called? Was it the so-called Black Women's Manifesto? I'm going to refresh my memory. Was it the Black Women's Manifesto?
Correct. That's the name of it.
It was. And some of the things that you're bringing out was in this very small little booklet. It was a small pamphlet, maybe 70 pages. It was a series of articles, and interestingly enough, it began, like the actual mantra was, "We're not against you." And it's interesting that all of these generations later, we're taught that these melanated women joined the feminist movement, and it was very anti-male. But the women, our mothers who are speaking for themselves, are not being heard, and the whole movement is being rebranded from that period of time. Granted, there are different waves of feminism, and we're talking about a very a slice of that era, of that movement. But this particular slice, where the Black Women's Manifesto is being birthed and discussed and interrogated, it was put out by they didn't call themselves melanated people or have the political jargon was they were third world peoples. It was the third world peoples. Anyway, and they said much of what you're saying now. The things that the problem in the community was not all of these things that the government or the politics or the news propagandizing would have us believe. Instead, it is these very media outlets that have given us our ideas of what masculinity looks like. And so we are holding our men up against the standards of the camel man. You know, in this period of time, Camel cigarettes were very popular. So there was the actor who did the commercial that was the epitome of masculinity. You know, like we have the Marlboro Man, and these ideas of masculinity, what it looks like on our televisions every day. And so not only were the women being influenced by that, but the men were being influenced by that, and starting to feel like their masculinity was constantly being challenged in all of these spaces, and that we were looking for masculinity in those spaces because they were crafting a narrative for us every day. And so it wasn't until this particular group of forward-thinking women were doing this kind of self-check and introspection and saying, these are not even our parameters. These are not even our standards. Whose standards have we adopted? And part of this kind of introspection, the women were saying, okay, and likewise, the men are holding us to this cult of domesticity, which was a real thing, the cult of domesticity and the cult of true womanhood, which was designed specifically to exclude third world people or melanated peoples. And so they found that the women were held to unrealistic expectations and therefore discarded, disrespected, and devalued because they didn't meet these European ideals, very much like what the sister's bringing out now. They had internalized a narrative, a countercultural narrative, because it wasn't ours, but it was the agenda and the purpose of what they call mainstream, or the mainstream people group, versus the people group that had no power over policy and procedure, which has always historically been us. So that was a great point. I wanted just to add that to kind of flesh that out. Those of you who might be interested in the Black Women's Manifesto to see what is in it and listen to what melanated women were saying for themselves about what white feminism, so-called white feminism, was really doing to their community, and how much it was actually being rejected in real life, by the majority of the females in that era. You may have had those that made Ms. Magazine to support it. The ones that made it and they were popularized and they were the ones that were propagandized that we know about today. But it's the masses. What was the general and majority consensus at the time? That's what you find in these little grassroots, paperback, hand-drawn booklets where the women are speaking for themselves. And they really are parsing through a lot of what's going on, a lot of what they're seeing, a lot of what the policies and the politics of the time. So if you're interested in that booklet, we will make that available to you. I think that the whole series is already uploaded to the official Under the Palm YouTube channel. So we'll put the link in our description box so you can go back and find us there. We're going to wrap up early this evening. So if you're just joining us, the topic is, whose laws are we keeping? So we're not going to go long this time. We have a lot of projects, and today's the very last show for the calendar year. You won't be able to get at us until January, so don't forget to push 1 so that you can let your voice be heard. You can weigh in on the conversations, because the sisters are really poking at. We're really putting a finger on some of the things that the sisters are hearing every day about you can't speak, you can't learn, you can't come to the Father. A lot of this has nothing to do with Torah. It doesn't even have really a lot to do with the New Testament. Instead, a lot of this is what we have inherited from Christianity. A lot of this is what we have inherited from their interpretations about our book, be it the Old Testament or the New Testament. And so it's really time for us to take an honest look at where some of these ideas are coming from. We discussed not too long ago, I think it was on TRC, when we looked at Jezebel. It was definitely a TRC conversation because the men were on board. TRC is our platform where we have the men at the table. We don't talk to them. We don't talk at the men. We talk to the men, and they respond to us in real time. And we asked, where is this Jezebel thought coming from? The first time you came upon this idea that you can slap this label Jezebel on the feminine principle whenever you dislike something, where did you get that from? And by and large, the consensus was the first time we had this thought, it was from church. This is not our thought. We did not put this together. This is something we inherited from the pulpit. And so when we sat down and really started to interrogate the female, the woman in the account and her relationship with Ahab, a lot of the facts didn't line up with the mythology. And so this Jezebel spirit thing that had to be crafted kind of deflated and fell apart. It deteriorated under real biblical examination, where we really had to bring it back to the Tanakh, where we really had to examine what was going on and realize everything that this whole list of narcissism, this is basically just a laundry or a recipe for narcissism, and it had nothing to do with the actual historical Jezebel. We were just listing narcissistic traits. very interesting how these things developed, and then how this historically became a negative way to hypersexualize the melanated female body, and all of the negative ways that it started to impact it. All of this stemmed back to the pulpit, not to any of the prophets, but to the pulpit. When we look at this, the degradation of the women, again, not the prophets, the philosophers, not the Hebrews, the Greeks, not the Israelites, the Romans. So why is this such a big part of what we are saying is the law? When we want to go up against the women, we say, well, the law says. And then when a woman says, show me that law, it's like, why are you being contentious? And so we have to really think about how are we going to reclaim our righteous spaces if we're not willing to be honest and look at them. So, Sal, is there still a lot of interested but shy listeners out there? No one willing to press one?
Yeah, you're right about that. There's a lot of listeners out there, but nobody's pressing number one at this time. Again, that number is 319-527-6239. I see some Skype callers on the line as well. If you want Skype, just press number 1. If you have a question or a comment, we open up the phone lines. Good.
All right. Okay, fam, I'm really not joking about this. We are not going to be on the air long, so don't be shy. Don't go into your cubby holes and your cavemen, your man caves, and complain about us later when we're off the air. We're giving you every opportunity to say, you know what, Mayana, you said a lot, but I don't like anything you said. I got questions. I like questions. You got questions? I like questions. Let's go to the phone lines. I think we have our first brave caller.
All right, let's go to 347-303. You're live in air.
Shalom, and of course it's Sister Aisha, because I always have something to say.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. And I have Sister Nyamala from Shema Yisrael on the line. I had to connect her.
Okay.
The thing about, I don't know if she has anything to say, but I'm going to speak first. I am not for oppression of women and the degradation of women, and I understand that there was a need for the feminist liberation movement. However, them trying to indoctrinate Israelite or African American or melanated women in it, I think was a ploy to, number one, in the early part of the women's liberation movement that took place, I believe it was in the 1800s. I could be wrong. Back in the times of Susan B. Anthony and all that, I don't know so much if they were trying to indoctrinate so many melanated women then, but I know definitely the women's liberation movement that was more the 50s and the 60s, they did, because I felt it was, and this is my opinion, in the efforts to try to ride the coattails of the civil rights movement that was really taking momentum. I even noticed in that movie, The Help, where they, even though the so-called white woman was the oppressor of the black women who were working in the houses of the white women, they somehow managed in the storyline to align the black woman and the white woman with each other. And as the white woman is helping this black woman, I guess, and the black woman is helping her by cooking so her husband doesn't know that she can't cook or whatever nonsense it is. But the thing about it is they've always rode the coattails of our movement. They were movement hijackers from the NAACP. I mean, the list goes on, and so I noticed they're always trying to show you that the white woman is there. She's your oppressor, but she's trying to help you, and she's being oppressed herself. And I've even heard some Israelite men with this garbage. So, I'm not saying that we should be for the oppression of everybody, but I think charity begins at home. So I definitely know what you're talking about, Mayana. And Sister Yamala, do you have anything you want to add?
Not right now.
Okay, well, they're ending early, so just in case, speak up.
We have, you just stay on the line. I think you have to press 1 twice after you've spoken, but stay on the line. We'll give you another opportunity to speak. Again, we're not going to stay over long this time, but even us not going over long is just being regular for everybody else. So don't worry about that. You did make some good points about the feminist movement and the agenda of
let me add one more thing. I went to, a lot of people don't know this about me, but the first time I went to college, I went to a women's Catholic college. The first college I went to in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I saw where and there were other all-women's colleges and universities around in Pittsburgh at the time. Now, at my school, women's, you had the women's Catholic liberal college, and there were a lot of nursing students, and they promoted the education of women, which was fine. But I noticed as time went on at Chatham, because I went to Carlow University, and there was another school named Chatham where the women's liberation movement was code for the lesbian movement. And it didn't happen so much when I was at Carlow, but I know at Chatham I had a black professor, I don't know if he was lying, told me how these women would go and they would recruit women for the undercover lesbian movement. Now, I wasn't there at Chatham University, so I don't know. But he seemed, I don't know if he was looking for a woman and they stopped his little plan or whatever the case was. But I noticed as I stayed at Carlow for the year and a half that I attended, I noticed a lot of the women kind of went that lesbian route. And I noticed a lot of our sisters going away to college dealt with abuse they suffered as children, sexual abuse. So, not blaming the white man for the lesbianism per se, we have a lot of abuse that goes on in our homes. But these environments like, some of these quote unquote liberal women's feminist environments do help to cultivate and develop that lesbian spirit.
Absolutely. I mean,
I'm gonna stop there. Yeah.
Because the show is going to be very short, we don't really have the time to look at all of those factors. But for the listening audience and those that will be listening later, don't be dismayed. Actually, Amuna and myself are scheduled to have this very conversation. I want to say not next Wednesday, because next Wednesday we have a conversation with the author of Barack Obama versus the Hebrew Israelites. You do not want to miss that. But the following Wednesday, we will be guests on another program where we will discuss, by the invitation of our sister Tina Matthews, to discuss how feminism affected and influenced, or didn't affect and influence, the melanated woman during these different waves. And so we'll talk about the different waves of feminism. We'll talk about to what degree they were successful, the European or the so-called white woman was successful or unsuccessful, because there was a lot of unsuccesses that we don't talk about. But Imuna and I will bring those out. I don't know if Imuna wants to add anything about that, because, like I said, we did an entire on this. And, again, don't feel cheated or like there's any disservice that we're not going to go into this portion for this episode, because there's, I want to say maybe 5 or 10, I don't know how many videos we did on Under the Palm on this specific exact topic. And again, not next Wednesday, but the following Wednesday, we'll do it again. So if we have any other callers, we can push them through. Thank you so much, Sister Aisha, for bringing that out, though. I appreciate that. It is another way that our culture is being influenced by outside ideologies and philosophies and political policies. Thank you very much for that. Next caller.
All right, family, once again, that number is 319-527-6239. Make sure you press 1 if you have a question or comment. You're calling via phone, calling via Skype, or use Google Voice to call into the show. Let's go to the next caller. Let's go to 267-283. You're live on air.
Shalom, shalom. This is Bashua. How's everyone doing this evening?
Okay, fine. Shalom.
Shalom. Shalom to all my Akiot and the Emot. All praises to Yahuwah for this show. I'm going to miss it for the month, but I know that you all are coming back. Once again, excellent conversation. And Mayana, you've made a couple of points that, really hit the nail on the head about a lot of the things going on and a lot of things that are being taught as law, as Torah, are based from the pulpit. And I've said this several times, that you cannot take Western ideologies and apply them to Hebrew thoughts. One of the teachings that I've noticed this going on is that there are a number of Hebrews, mainly men, who say that it is against Torah for women to wear pants. Now, if you decide not to wear pants or whether you decide to wear them, that's your choice. Me personally, I wear skirts and dresses 99.9% of the time. And it's not a problem for me, but that's one of the teachings that more or less came from the pulpit of the Christian church as opposed to it being something in Torah. And I remember some time ago you had a relationship challenge episode regarding women wearing pants. And you still hear this teaching, if not in certain Hebrew circles, but you definitely hear it more so in the Christian church. And again, that's a Western ideology. And unfortunately, that Western ideology has crept in to the Hebraic culture. And so that's something that we all need to take a look at. What things am I doing that are more or less, I'm sorry, I'm a little tongue-tied here, but what things are we doing are more or less a Western ideology as opposed to something in Torah? Am I really doing this based on Torah, or is this something that I picked up from the captivities from the other cultures? And a lot of things, that's what's going on. And so, that's one of the things I thought of when you mentioned that. But I know you all aren't going to be long. I just want to put my little 2 cents in, good conversation. And that's something to think about, some of the things that we're doing, from the way we dress, from how we do things, how we eat our food and everything like that. Just tiny, just small things like that. But again, I just want to put my 2 cents in. And also, Malaka, I'm so sorry, sis, you're not feeling well. What I was going to recommend to you also was if you can get your hands on some fire cider, that would be great. And if you get some fire cider, and also if you have some elderberries, make some elderberry tea, because elderberry is good for the immune system. Mm-hmm. And if you can make a tincture, you can do that as well. As a matter of fact, and please, just a quick shameless plug, I have a blog called Teacher of Good Things at teacherofgoodthings.blogspot.com. And I have an entry on how to make tinctures, and I'm working on an entry to make fire cider, so stay tuned for that. And again, I'm going to miss this under the palm. I'm going to miss Relationship Challenge. I'm going to miss Debate Talk for You. And so I look forward to the next secular year until we all meet again. And have a wonderful evening. And shalom, shalom.
Shalom. Thank you so much for the support, Ima. It was amazing having you visit with us and to spend time with us last night. It was for those of you who know, she is a blessing community. This is was it 52 years in the culture, Ima, that you have? 52 years in the culture.
Maybe a little bit longer.
So for the listening audience, it was like, why is she trying to mother Malaka? That is a mother of Israel doing what mothers do. She heard her baby was sick. Right. She was on it. That is what the mothers of Israel does. Malaka, being one of the other mothers of the youngest, knows exactly what that's like. We call Malaka Mother Malaka, so she understands that spirit. I'm sure she wasn't offended at all.
I appreciate that. So that.
Hallelujah, hallelujah. We are so grateful for for those of you who are new to Under the Palm Hebrew Women Speak, we have 2 elders on our panel, which makes our panel unique in many, many ways because we have the wisdom of the elders on site. And as you have heard, we have the wisdom of the elders on the line. When we say elders, we're not talking about people that have read a book or 2. We're talking about women who have lived the life that we are studying, have lived it. Not 2 days, not 3 days. They have textbooks older than most of you on this. They have lived full generations. Our Ima brought with her grandbaby to the session that we were at last night. And this is what I'm talking about because forget that it's bigger than us. Why do we have these conversations? Because it's bigger than us. For us, this is not theology. For us, this is not an ism. So it's very cute when we have people coming to us asking us about our scholarships and our isms. This is not an ism for us. We live this. We don't believe this. We be living this.
That's
all day,
right.
every day.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
Hey, hallelujah.
Now, since we're not trying to be here all night, I'm not going to call no names. The next person that wants to speak, take the mic.
Hey, this is
There's yours.
This is Iman the Army. Can you hear me?
King.
Okay. You know what I wanted to add to that discussion is that we've been influenced very much by, in modern times, in more modern times, more recent times, about how white women have viewed their status. And I say that I remember back in the, what was it, the 60s or the 70s? No, 70s it must have been. When they first started what they called consciousness raising groups. And the strange thing was that you had only a couple of, I wanted to find out what it was about, so I went, but it was only a couple of us Israelite sisters who were there. Most of it was white women complaining about the fact that they were denied their rights, and they now wanted to take their rightful places and all of that kind of stuff. And the two or three, they looked at them like they were crazy. What are you talking about? It was one of those kind of things. Is like, listen, you already have a privileged status. We do anything to have our men hold us up like that, and here you are complaining about that. So it was that kind of situation, and we were never part of that early feminist movement nonsense. Black women, if you want to use that euphemism, but Israelite women were always out of the house working, contributing to the family. They didn't have to worry about it. We were never paid correctly or anything like that, but we were always put in that position by our very status. So we have to worry about whether or not, whether a choice, whether or not it was career or stay at home for us, it was we had to do both of them anyway. In order to support our families, and sometimes in order to keep our families alive, we have to do this. How many times have you heard it said about, the black woman who would come into the corner because the white women or the Jewish women particularly, had out there to pick them up to work them like dogs all day for 50 cents or $1, So we always had that situation going on with us. It was never a question of liberation for us alone. We've always worked for the liberation of our people and to sustain our people in some sense.
That's right.
So when you come to this situation about those white women who we thought they were crazy. What are you talking about? You're being held up on a pedestal, and you're hearing you complaining about this. What's wrong with you? And what happened is that I think one of the reasons, the basis of their complaint was that, while you were holding us all up on that pedestal and everything like that, you were actually down there in the trenches looking for the women who were downtrodden, in order to make love to them and do whatever you had to do. So, that became their main complaint. But it was a series of male bashings and everything like that. And we quickly, I think we attended maybe 2 meetings, and then that was the end of that, because that had nothing to do with us. Not with the people, not with all of our people were being oppressed. We didn't have time for that, So a lot of times what happens is now we're thinking that we're supposed to be joining them in their complaints when their complaints are not the same as ours. And we need to realize that. They're worried about whether or not they're going to reach equality with their men and all that kind of foolishness as far as certain areas are concerned, because they've always been on top anyway. They're worried about that. We're worried about how we're going to liberate all of our people, not just the women, but the men, the children, our elders, the young, we've been worried about that. That has been our concern, So I just wanted to add that into the conversation. So that nonsense about when they talk about women's lib and everything like that and whatnot, we were not involved in those conversations. We quickly dismissed them as nonsense because we had much bigger fish to fry, so to speak. Zehu.
Hallelujah. That is correct. Emma Yahudi, do you want to add anything to that? Because we have this idea that we have to theorize and be involved in hypothetics about what happened in the 60s and the 70s, that's ridiculous. We have living history on the panel. When we tell you that there were women who rejected this idea that it was more important to privilege our gender over our people, they're here to tell you we didn't do that. There was not the kind of adherence to that ideology that the people who get to rewrite history would have us believe. And so because it gets propagandized in this way, men have internalized it. How many times? You can't say nothing to a brother without him calling you a feminist now. Oh, you're being a feminist. They throw feminists around like it's a swear word. And so, you know, anything that makes you conscious or studied in what you're supposed to know as a woman, that, and when you have a conversation saying anything that is female positive, then they get to throw feminists at you. And another thing they throw at you, Jezebel. And both of these ideologies, they were crafted by someone who had a very significant investment, a stake in dividing the masculine and feminine principle of Israel. They knew what they were doing. And now they don't even have to say anything to us because we will reproduce their ideology and their agenda all by our onesies. All by our onesies. And again, and I'll have Emma Yehudi weigh in on this because, again, she was alive during this time that we are looking back on and accepting someone else's take. Instead of asking the melanated women who were there, what did they think? Did they embrace this ideology? They were there. They're telling you, no, we didn't. I don't care what.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, I don't care what the book some Euro wrote said about it. Now I'll wrap it up and put the floor back and open up the floor again. But when we go back over this the Wednesday after next, and again through all the series, and we then, like I said, we have the living testimonies here. We will show that this was something that, if anything, the truth is the European female became so frustrated by us. They were like, they actually, this is what they said. This was their position. We can't trust them because they keep putting their race over our gender. They had a gender initiative. We had a race agenda. We didn't care. Like, it wasn't as important because we knew, and even if you read the Black Women's Manifesto, what it says is we knew that if we didn't all go somewhere, none of us were going somewhere. We couldn't separate.
There you go.
Couldn't do it. And we didn't do it. No matter how many books written by some Euro tells you differently. You have to, but again, I'm not going to speak. I wasn't there. I was born in '75. I was getting breast milk when this was already going down. But these imams were there. These imams were there. You don't have to listen to some brother or some Euro to ask to tell you what melanated women thought. We have two right here who are about to tell you what we thought. And I'm going to give the floor. And then from there I want to hear Sister Amuna, because she was part of the study as well, and I'm sure she may have some thoughts on it. And again, we're going to talk about it in 2 weeks. I'm sorry, Yehudi, I was on my soapbox.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm going to yield the floor to Sister Imuna because I want to hear her thoughts. So, Sister Imuna, you have the floor.
Oh, I thank you, Imam Yehudi. I'm just sitting back listening. For the listening audience, the conversation is blossoming, and so I don't want to necessarily take it, and my thing is going like crazy. I don't want to necessarily take it all over the place, but, the conversation is about whose laws are we following. And as I said earlier in my opening statement, it's my estimation that we're following a little bit of everything. It would be fair, like Sister Mariana is saying, that the research, oh, man, the computer's wilding out. The research, okay, hold on. Let me close this thing here. The research,
that's the people.
The research shows initially that melanated women were rejecting the thought of feminism, but then some people may say that today, because that was some 40 plus years ago, today whose laws are we following? Because today, maybe it was rebranded, you came back again with this lipstick feminism, and then you came back again with all of these different thought processes that feminism carried within it. And although some melanated women didn't buy into it wholesale, there were some aspects, like you would hear about, the Beyoncés and the Rihannas, and this whole conversation of we don't need the man. So it did come. It came in another way, and then someone would have to ask the question, well, whose laws are we following concerning this? You understand what I'm saying? So they weren't successful in the beginning, but I would have to be honest and look and say that a lot of the melanated women today, and that's what I studied studying the angry black woman and the independent black woman, so-called, this thought now is being perpetuated or propagated by those whose mothers and grandmothers may have rejected it.
That's
so I'm
right.
speaking specifically to the feminine principle right now. And I think to a certain degree the men are looking at today and then judging the past to say, well, you're like this today, so I know you have to be down with them. Not having cracked one book or one resource to really ask. Right. But time progressed, it's like, oh, yeah, look at you. You don't need no man. You following the pa-pa-pa. You understand what I'm saying? And so that's my thoughts on the conversation. As Sister Miranda said, the study is so wide, it's so vast that, we have to ask those who were there. We have to be honest about what's going on now, and have these type of conversations so that we don't necessarily dismiss totally some of the critiques that have come up over time. Because it's not only the men who are following masculine or the European male-dominant thought processes. Now it is also our women internalizing this.
Right.
If she's going around with a blonde wig on her head like that, unless, that's not us. You know what I mean? Like, who's that? You want to look like Marilyn Monroe and you want to do all of these things. They finally, I guess what I'm saying is they finally succeeded to a certain degree. We would have to admit, and now collectively, unfortunately, we are following the ways of the nations once again. So as the babies need to calm down, I'll be back again.
Absolutely. As Sister Amuna, as the conversation and the study progressed, we can't look at anything as if it's frozen in a particular era or a particular space, because time and people and language are all fluid. It's continuously moving, and one thing will influence and affect the other. I'm going to bring in Ashanti and then Sister Only Love, because Only Love is joining us. Now she's en route to add to the conversation. We definitely won't close before hearing Sister Only Love's thoughts. But what I do want to say is, as Imuna said, and again you'll see all of it come out, that there is this progression. And although there is this resistance, even now we'll find that there's resistance and then there's concession. There's resistance and then there's concession. There's resistance and there's resignation. We keep going into these peaks and lows because we are cognizant of our weaknesses and our inability to influence policy and going in the direction that we want to go into. We talk about that all of the time. We even look at, we struggle between, do we feminize our men or do we infantilize our men? Like, we don't understand how to strike the balance. And again, that's because of our distance from the will of the Most High. The Most High gave us order, and we decided that the things that we were living and experiencing and that which surrounded us didn't coincide with our instruction. Instead of saying that didn't have to coincide with our instruction should have informed us. Instead of us trying to reconcile what we were living, we should have reconciled how we were living with the law. And we keep doing things in the reverse, trying to make the law fit our lifestyle instead of our lifestyle the law, and we don't do that. And so, as the sister said, yes, we had media trying to inform what masculinity looks like, media trying to inform what femininity looks like, and both sides falling for it. Well, we have Jet Magazine, Ebony Magazine in the 60s and 70s, which is supposed to be our media, feeding us live perm kits and wigs and all of these other things. We even look at the entertainers back. We see the Supremes with their wigs on. Those are straight wigs. We can see it even in how the entertainers started to adopt
certain things in order to be accepted as mainstream entertainers, and the women started to emulate that. So we're not, and again, we talk about this idea of the women wanting to be desirable to the men. If the men are saying, and they are adopting this standard of beauty and saying we have agreed with, this is what femininity looks like. The melanated woman is going to be, I need this melanated man, so I'm going to be what he says is attractive. And we have to go, and we fall for it. We fall for it. We fall for the wrong things. We saw that with this other. There was another influence very recently. There's this kind of Cutno debacle where the women wanted to have the appreciation of the men, so they were willing to do all kinds of abominable things in order to get the likes that these men were giving this other woman who, had nothing to do with our culture. But it didn't matter that she had nothing to do with our culture. She was getting likes from the men. And that was more important than being Hebrew at the moment. What was more important than being Hebrew was being somebody's wife. And this is a problem that we as women continue to have, is that we allow anything that glitters and says that it equals man, we will look into. We'll give you a chance to tell your story if it means we can get a man at the end of the day. And so we have a lot of things that we need to look at, and that's why this conversation is important. Whose laws are we following? Whose influence is important? Are we looking at, again, I want to bring this back to the idea that we had Romo and Greco philosophers talking. I know Ashanti has a lot of information on this, and I'm sure she's eager to share it with us, how this impacts a lot of the things that we're looking at when we say it's Hebrew culture, the ways that we view our women, and the way some of us women view our men. They had a lot to say about what was masculine and what was feminine. As well, and that's how biblical passages get reinterpreted, again, from the pulpit, and then we adopt and inherit those philosophies from those spaces. Who did I say that I wanted to give the mic to? I think I wanted to give it to Ashanti, and then to Only Love if she is back on the panel. Ashanti, you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I do want to weigh in. However, since Sister Only Love is on, I can go after her after she gives her insight.
Look at that. You see sisterhood in real life? That's right. Sister Only Love, welcome to the conversation.
Shalom, everyone. I apologize for my lateness. I have another hat that I wear as the executive director of a nonprofit, so I was saying bye to one of our staff after 4 years. So please forgive me talking en route home. But I wanted to just give some observations about this, because I think a lot of times as Hebrews in America, we keep things very American-centric, and we're coming to the Torah through the Western society, because America really was patterned after Greco-Roman culture. And so a lot of times we can't really separate what is actually Torah from the presuppositions that we're bringing when we pick up the scriptures. I just got back from a ministry trip to Hebrew communities in Nigeria and Ghana, and I was actually asked by an elder Hebrew brother who's over congregations in Nigeria to come and teach the women. And that may be surprising, because a lot of times American Hebrews will try to almost guilt American Hebrew women by saying, oh, well, in Africa, this is what they do, this is what they don't do. Women shouldn't teach, women shouldn't this. But actually, when I've interacted with African Hebrews, it's been seen as a plus if a woman can teach Torah. And it was asked by the Ghanaian Hebrew community, the Sefwe and the Igbos, to come and teach their women Torah. Like, they want their women to be equipped in Torah. They want their women to be strong members of society. This wasn't a taboo thing. This wasn't women, can't teach and women can't, break down the scriptures to a friend. I had someone from a camp tell me it was wrong for me to even talk to a friend about a psalm because we were both women. And so I think when we are coming into this truth, we really need to go back into our culture. But even if we're going to try to say, well, in Africa they have polygamy, let's do polygamy, I think you actually have to engage the culture. And I've been engaging African culture since high school with different friends that I've had and experiences. And this wasn't my first time going to Africa, but I was really floored by how eager the brothers were for a woman to come and edify their sisters. I mean, like almost rolling out the red carpet and saying, you know, one temple said, can you take this young sister who just finished her bachelor's and kind of, you know, mentor her, or I don't really like that mentor word since we're talking about Greco-Roman culture, but kind of give her some guidance so she can do community organizing and break down the Torah. So, again, I just think there's a lot of misconceptions, even when we use this term feminist. Many black women don't even consider themselves feminists. They consider themselves womanists. And then there's an Igbo scholar who took it a step further, and she said, I'm not a feminist, I'm not a womanist, but I'm a mother. I'm a mother. She's talking about the mothering movement, that should be a title. And this is an Igbo woman who says her people are a lost tribe of Israel. And she's written many books about mothering and also the Hebrew roots. And when she says mothering, it's not like, it's almost like a term opposed to feminism for women who are rooted in African culture. So I think what we need to stop doing is using other cultures to excuse the beliefs we want to have here in America, and stop speaking for other cultures. In Nigeria alone, there's 300 tribes. So some tribes are patriarchal, some tribes women have a great deal of rights. The Igbos were always known as giving their women a great deal of rights, to the point where some slave catchers actually were requesting Igbo women because the women had work skills, because that is something known. And one of the most famous modern black feminists is actually an Igbo woman. She's been featured on some of Beyonce's songs. So I just wanted to give that perspective, because a lot of times I feel like African culture is being used almost to beat Hebrew women down in America, even though on other hands people want to say, oh, we're not Africans and those Hamites. But then when it's convenient, when it comes to something like polygamy, then it's, oh, we're African, you know. So we like to do it, you know, use Africa in the way we want to use it when we feel like it, even though many times we don't want to admit that, you know, Hebrews, you know, have many brothers and sisters still in Africa. So these are some of the contradictions we need to talk about. As far as the independent black woman, I know growing up, you know, as a poor, darker-skinned woman in foster care, no one came out and told me to be an independent woman, but you begin to become independent when you see that no one like you is going to be rescued. And so I think sometimes we're making up terms for the results of very real issues in our community. If some women did not take that independent stance, we may not have some of the things we have in the community. If we want women in our community not to feel like they have to be independent, then where is the safety net that don't come from the government? You know, where are, you know, people adopt all of these black girls in foster care when statistics show if you're darker skin, you probably are going to languish in the system longer. So those are just some of my thoughts. I apologize for being late to the conversation, but I know it's been edifying so far. Shalom. Is anyone there?
Yes. Thank you very much for that. I was on mute. Thanking you on mute. My apologies for that. Thank you so much for that insight, because you are correct and you made some very important points that I want to go back to. But before I do, we have one caller on the line. I was also saying, apparently to myself, that since Sister Only Love joined us a little bit later than we had hoped, I'm going to extend this call with the blessing of everyone else to at least 10:30. So instead of the 10 o'clock, they were hoping to cut it off just so we can get a little bit more from Only Love and a little bit more from the callers as they wanted to engage the conversation. I think this feminism thing has sparked something. And I think the ideas, I suspect that the ideas of using the consonant when it's convenient and dropping it when it's an inconvenience is something that we want to explore and to look at as well. And we talk about looking at things from a Eurocentric lens and filtering it through the masculine gaze in so many spaces. So I guess this conversation has taken on, it has some organic growth because we're not just talking about the laws, but we're also looking at how these very intimate, very personal experiences are also influencing how we engage not just each other, but the laws that are supposed to be governing us as a nation. So we'll look into those things. I'm going to turn it over to the caller. Can we get the caller through, Sal, please?
All right, let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to 347-303. You're live in air.
Sister Yamala, go ahead.
Yes, shalom, everyone.
Shalom.
I'm trying to bring together all that was said thus far and get my thoughts clear. But I know we were talking about the Greco-Roman influence, and then I was just thinking as we look into who the Greco-Romans were influenced by, we can see they were influenced by the Egyptians. So then it comes right back to the Hamites and their influence on us in Israel during our time of captivity, even the Canaanites. So it's like throughout our history, we've been constantly around and surrounded by other people that have influenced us. So to start it at Greco-Rome, I think is a little bit too ahead of the game, and we could keep going back and back. It's just a lack of evidence and historical written things that limit us in those aspects. But I also want to touch on what everyone's talking about with feminism. And I think when someone else writes our history, it's seen as feminism, but actually it's nationalism. And when more than 40% of our population are women, it's necessary for us to be educated. It's necessary for us not to go through some injustices and to raise up our children in the right way. But when someone else writes our history, it becomes feminism because they dealt with feminism. But what it really is nationalism. And those are just 2 points that I wanted to express. And Toda for all that y'all are doing, and I'm thankful to be on this line. Hallelujah.
Thank you so much for calling in. Hallelujah. Thank you so much for calling in. We always appreciate our callers. We appreciate the listeners. We appreciate those that come in after we go off the air and they click subscribe on the YouTube channel. If you don't know, if you're listening now and you don't know where our YouTube channel is, that's www.youtube.com/Debate Talk for You, where you will find not just Under the Palm and not just TRC, but very important segments like Man Up, the open mic segments, the round tables. We have the hot seat. We have everything you could possibly want. And if we don't have it, give us a call or contact us at Debate Talk for You at gmail.com and give a suggestion to Sal about what you would like to see us do when we come back around in 2018. If you're a woman and you would like to be on the panel, or if you're a woman and you want to be on Debate Talk for You, please contact us at underthepalm2 at gmail.com, and we'll see if we can get you on the air. Sal tends to listen to us, so don't worry about it. And we'll get you on the air and have your voices be heard. Also, don't forget to look into the Yummy Cottage, which is our brick-and-mortar initiative started by our sister Amuni Israel, and she will give us a little bit more about that at the end of the hour. And we have a lot of other things for you. A lot of these things will be in our description box below. But I wanted to take a time to remind you of all the things we have in store for you in 2018, so you don't miss us too much. But this is the very last time you'll get to talk to us for the rest of 2017. So make sure you press 1 if you're on the line and you're listening in. Make sure you press 1. If you don't know that number, Sal will repeat it again after we go to Ashanti. Ashanti, please let us know your thoughts.
I like to circle it back real quick to what the Imahot was saying, Sister Naomi and Sister Yehudi, about this so-called feminist movement in the 60s and 70s. If you look at Israelite women, we always took care of the village, right? We did not only just take care of home, which I don't think there's nothing to take care of home. I love having a decent home, right? And women do set the tone in the home, but we were able to take care of each other and the other children. So, of course, the melanated woman didn't need to fight for rights to get out of the house. Yes, the Euro-Gentile woman, she was a domestic slave. And she was a domestic slave, just definitely from the Greeks and the Romans. And the sister who came on, she said, well, yeah, where did the Greeks and the Romans get it from? The Babylonians and Persians, definitely, when they took over Egypt and a lot of the Mediterranean area. If you look at the book of Daniel, the Father lists out what nations come and what kings come and then what kings and nations get destroyed. It's pretty much Babylonia, Persia, Greek, and then Rome. And you start to see where the origins of those things come from. But, yeah, the Proverbs 31 woman, she worked inside and she worked outside. So she got to work outside. But the thing is, when you're a domestic slave and you're made to stay within the four walls and you're not allowed to do what you need to do to take care of the village, you're like a caged bird. Or a caged animal. And once that animal gets out the cage, they start running loose. So I just wanted to circle back to that. And, another thing, I was talking to a 55-year-old man on Sabbath, and he said, we don't got no big mamas no more. And I said, yes, we do. I said, yes, we do got big mamas. It's just that some of these women out here, they don't want to listen to the big mamas. and it's not convenient for the women, and it's not convenient for the men to listen to the big mamas or the pawpaws. You know what I mean? Our brothers, like, if you actually listen to some of them talk and listen to some of them tell on themselves, half of them are not educated. They barely graduated high school, if they did graduate high school. Some of them went to college, but, you don't have to go to college, but some of them are not getting properly educated. They're looking at certain aspects of history, like, Israel was black, or Israel was melanated, or, our people are cursed. But, in certain aspects of secular historical information that goes along with the other scriptures and verses, you don't hear them well-versed in those areas. And for that reason, they don't know they're practicing Western ideology. Some of them don't know. Now, some of them do know. And for the ones that do know, like you guys said, it's not convenient for them to want to change. A lot of people came into this Israelite walk for the benefits. They came in to get validated on their worldviews they already had. You know what I'm saying? So, lastly, I will say this. I got some videos on my channel, 916 Shanshan on YouTube. I talk about the word head and head covering and where this term head of household comes from. If you notice in the Bible, the phrase head of household is nowhere to be found. So the thing is, when we're getting this head of household thing, we have to ask ourselves where it's coming from. I did touch on a lot of what you call new women of Rome, and it looks to be the first feminist movement because those women, they had incorporated into their Greco-Roman laws that they can have husbands who have a strategy or a benefit to be adulterers. Their men could be adulterers, and so that's what a lot of the head covering had to do with in like 1 Corinthians. But one of those first feminist movements you see is in Rome, in Roman colonies such as Ephesus and Corinth. So, like you said, you know, a lot of our oppressors, when they came over to the Americas and started enslaving our ancestors, they brought with them a lot of their culture. So I don't want to be too long, but yeah, 916 Sharshan. I got videos called Head Covering. Talk about mutual submission, which is basically going back to the beginning, going back to Torah. And so I yield after that. But actually, before I yield, I want to say I pray for our brothers, because like anything, it takes time to heal. There's a process to detox. We have to go through a process of washing away a lot of what we've learned. A lot of what we learned is from the Euro Gentile. So, you know, I pray for our brothers. I love our brothers sincerely, and I yield my time.
Okay, hallelujah. I'm told that we are officially off of the Blog Talk Radio platform, and now only the ones that have called in and listening via phone or via Skype are able to hear what we are saying until we see it on the replay. Sister Shanti brought out a few very important things that I want to touch on very, very briefly. One of the things that we're hearing a lot about is the scholarship of our brothers and some of the things that may have been informing their introduction to the culture. And I would agree that to an extent and in too many cases, our brothers are seeking some kind of masculine affirmation, because we are in a society that is constantly calling their masculinity, their ability to provide for their homes, and all of this different types of disempowerment. They're experiencing that because it's being called into question, and that's causing this disempowerment. I think it was James Cone that was writing, James Cone being the father of black theology, was saying, so-called black theology, was saying that the man, the melanated man, is finds himself in a precarious situation vis-a-vis so-called white masculinity. In that particular realm, he finds himself constantly being questioned, and so what he does is he turns onto his woman. And this is something that, again, Christians, so-called Christians, are able to recognize. This is not something that the Israelites have made up. Their own theology, they understand these things. It's coming from their apologists, their theologists. They already know that it is a society that has breeded this kind of preoccupation with our political position in society. This is not something that our men are making up and emphasizing for no reason. And so this is true. So in a way, as Amuna would say, they get their man card when they come into certain congregations and Knesset, because they get reaffirmed in these masculine spaces in the way that they've been looking for. Going back to the elders, though, you know, we have, like you said, we have Big Mama, and we have, Papa, and we have some younger women now are becoming Big Mama, and that was never the case traditionally. But back in the days, and I want Ima Yehudi to weigh in on this, because I believe Ima Yehudi has a very poignant and relevant anecdote to this effect, that back then, our elders didn't need to be accredited scholars in anything. They didn't have to be holding degrees. They held life. They held life experiences, and we grew up. Our parents and our grandparents got the best life information from their elders, who were able to put things together, having never set foot in an education institution past the 5th or 6th grade. And it was still like my daddy was probably a genius in some spaces. He was correcting math books in the 2nd grade, but if you were to get him to write something, you would not think so, because he wrote the way he spoke. But you couldn't put a math problem in front of him that he couldn't solve. And he grew up in rural Mississippi, but there's nothing you could put past my daddy. He had an intelligence that certain so-called scholars would jeer at, because he didn't have all the degrees they were looking for. He got his associate's degree, and he had degrees in different types of electrician and I don't know, cars and all kinds of stuff. He could do all kinds. He was certified to do all kinds of manual labor.
but the degree they would be looking at would be that associate degree that he got, probably through Job Corps or something. And so, but believe me, if you were to go by that associate degree and try to trick him with something mathematical, you would lose your mind. He would make quick work of you if you put a math problem in front of him. And this is the thing. We are, again, we talk about what we are privileging when we're judging our men in terms of, oh, but he doesn't have a degree in blah, blah, blah. Like, he didn't do all of this. And so his value is going to be judged on the standards that the European has made for us. Instead of, is he going to be committed to the family? Is he going to earn money? However he earns money legally, however he earns money, can he build a bookshelf? Can he fix a car? Will the children eat? Will the bills get paid? Whether or not he could sit in a stuffy room with a bunch of euros is not what we are judging our men on. But that is what they tell us we should judge our men on. Now, I'd be the first to tell you, if we don't have any expectations of our men, we can expect nothing. If we have no expectations, we should expect nothing. So we need to continue to have standards. We have to continue to have boundaries. We have to continue to push our men to achieve. But achievement doesn't have to look like what they say it looks like. That's why we have to continue to examine what is informing our standards. What's informing our boundaries? What's informing how we value one another? Is it Torah? Because to circle back to our actual topic, is it Torah? And so even our ancestors, our elders, weren't necessarily book smart. These oral traditions when we bring only love back into the conversation, these oral traditions are not coming from academics. Right? It's not coming from academics. So I know that Malaka is still holding on and hanging in there. We appreciate you for that. Sister, you want to weigh in on something before we go to the Imas and to Amuna and circle back to Only Love?
Oh, thank you, sis. I am going to yield my time because I would love to hear what Sister Only Love and the Imas would like to share with us tonight. So I'm going to yield my time.
Look at my sisters doing what sisters do. Okay, Imas, Ima, you guys whoever wants to weigh in, the floor is always yours.
Oh, Kane, I'm biting at the lip here. It's not too long, but I'm gonna equate the woman's liberation of the Caucasian woman and the disparity, or let's see, the dialogue in which my grandmother had this way of thinking towards the men, how it connects, where she did not agree, nor did she feel she was a part of this liberation because of her experiences when they were hanging people and witnessing this, and the degradation she saw, and even witnessed children being abused. And she felt, and someone made a comment earlier, that she felt protective, even with her brother and her dad, because she didn't grow up with a mother. And as she got older and had children, she treated her sons not with loyalty, but with a direction. And then it coupled with the fact that she would say, this is foreign to me, this women liberation, because we as women, she would say colored women, can't identify, because when we hurt, our family hurt, we feel that accountability, or in this time she felt we were already liberated. Or it was an interesting dynamic with my grandmother. And then I come along and looking at the equalness in the male and female in the family. Not to say outside wasn't confusion, but people have to understand from which I come. Growing up in a black, I just say, neighborhood, a black community. So when we went outside our realm and other nationalities, it was a little foreign. because we're so used to being around people that look like us. Then she brought, as a fourth grade education woman, was the smartest woman. I always say this. She brought a reality to us to say, I've got to prepare you for what's out there. This is your safety net here, being in your black community. But you got to know what's going on and how they think and how they think about us and their interpretation. This is how she was living her life and showing us examples so she can prepare us for out there and let us understand. Don't go to what she would say, don't buy into the foolishness of this liberation. This is their struggle. It's not our struggle. It's totally different. And then how she related to the men of her sons equated with that, of knowing the degradation where she saw men being hung and burned and their genitals cut. It's just a lot of things I can remember that now, she's told, and I've written some things down. And it was interesting how she prepared me at 10 years old through the riots to explain to me what was going on in the South, because she lived it. So it parallels just listening to an older person, regardless of the lack of, as they say, education. She was intelligent and wise because of her experiences that she can pass down to her children and her grandchildren.
Hold up for that. I knew you were going to bring, I was so happy that you brought that out, correct, because we tend to privilege a very particular type of scholarship. We like to limit what intelligence and academics is allowed to look like and what's valuable and not valuable. Again, judging it by these alien standards. We used to privilege the wisdom of the elders, oral traditions. The grill was an intricate part of the fabric and our culture, right? It was a staple part of feeding the family was this storytelling, and we understood. I mean, we had anecdotes, we had storytellings, we had fables, we had things that we transmitted culture orally before we did it in this written way. Even when we look at our Israelite history, we were a nomadic transient people for a very long time, and very often we are jeered because our written documentation seems younger than some of these older written things. But you find that the people that are creating written documents are settled civilizations. They're settled. They have already settled. They've already established their kingdoms. When we start writing, it's when we settle down. It's when we're about to go into our own land, we're settling down, and we have the time and the organization to do so. But when we're moving from place to place and we're divided in the ways that we were divided and we're going here and there, we don't have writing as a solid body of work. And so, we don't give ourselves permission to understand our historical context, his socio-historical context, and understand what's going on and the reasons why our written documentation would be a little bit younger than some of the other civilizations. But it doesn't mean that we weren't transmitting the culture. It doesn't mean that we didn't have when we say the oral laws, it's not political laws. We're talking about the way we transmitted culture. When we see the importance that's placed on the Hebrew mother, the reason why Ezra and everyone else is very concerned with where the daughters get matched up with, it is because even if you want to argue that the man creates the lineage, the women preserve the culture. It's the women that are going to teach the younger ones. So if the woman is not Hebraic in her mindset, in her learning, and her understanding, what the children are going to receive from young is going to be tainted and corrupt. Why? Because she's going to write stories for all of them? No, because she's going to talk to them. Everything is not going to be in a book. Mothers transmit to children by talking to them very patiently. Don't touch that. Don't put that in your mouth. Don't eat this. This is when you go to bed. This is what's good for you. This is what's kosher. This is what's not kosher. That comes from the mother. You think she's slipping them notes and Post-its? No. It's a conversation that's happening. We used to understand that. And again, I'm sure Only Love is going to touch on a lot of that when it is her turn to speak again, because that's something that the continent isn't distant from and hasn't forgotten. They still remember their griots. They still remember their elders, and they still privilege communication. Communication is one of the things, if you go to the Soul Center, shameless plug, if you go to the Soul Center, you look at some of the programs that Amuna has put together, there's emphasis on communication. There's an emphasis on the written word. There's an emphasis on this oral transmission of thought. And as Ashanti was talking earlier about the healing, taking time to heal, that's the very essence of the Solonomics lessons that Amuna has for free in some cases on www.litbomb.com. I'm going to shamelessly plug all night because I don't have a lot of time. But with Amuna being on the line, unless Ima Naami wants to speak first, I'll slide it over to Amuna. Ima Naami, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I just want to say that you're so right about this not having the degrees and being educated. I remember they had, I think they used to call her Mother Harriet. She was down in North Carolina, and she was a midwife. She delivered hundreds of babies and never lost a baby or a mother. I don't care what kind of breed side down birth, sideways birth, she always, she came through it. She became so much famous that, quite naturally the Caucasians, the Euros came over to find out what were her methods and whatnot. This woman never went through a medical school. She never interned and never did a residency. But she delivered hundreds of babies, our babies as well as their babies, and never lost a baby or a mother, and had techniques that they wanted to study. I remember my own grandmother, who I loved, for the short period of time that I had her, and I remember that we never got sick when we were kids because she always had these remedies that would, heal us and strengthen our immune systems and all the rest of that kind of stuff before it became fashionable to talk about, other types of methods. But she had this already down pat. And I remember just for, like I said, for the short period of time that she died when I was about 7, I think, 6 or 7. Even for that short period of time, I remember her wisdom. And that's what I'm saying. It is just, we have to stop looking at ourselves through the lens of the European who has set the standard, who has set the standard, so to speak, and whatnot like that, when we know that we had wisdom, we had very, very wise people who came here with skills, who were skilled people, who didn't go to so-called schools. They weren't allowed in some schools. They weren't allowed to even sit in those schools, yet still they had the skills. If you remember, and I'm just going to make this brief, they had I think it came on HBO or whatnot, like what the Lord has made, and they talked about the young man, I can't think of his name now, who was doing heart surgery, so much so he couldn't even come in his name. He couldn't even, they wouldn't even allow him into the school, but he perfected a method of heart surgery, of cardiac surgery that, the Caucasian doctor got, he got all the credit, but this young man was doing it. He finally gave him a chance to do it, and he showed that he could do it very well. Anyhow, let me get off here because, like you said, the time is limited, and I don't want to take up all that time. Tell our about for the young daughters who yielded the floor and allowed us the Emas to speak. Tell her about.
Hold on, correct.
Hallelujah. Tell us for that. Like I said, I want to send it over to Amuna, and then we're going to go to Only Love. Sister Amuna, what are your thoughts on the doula and the griot and the oral traditions and the elders and what gets to be called scholarship and what gets to be called not scholarship. I was going to say something unsuitable for debate talk. So so what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's been said on the conversation in more than one time where we have taken on a thought process, an ideology that's not our own, understandably, and it's through this lens that we're viewing one another. We're viewing accomplishments, what it means to be successful, and it also teaches us in a certain space how to deal with our issues in the way that we've been conditioned to deal with our issues. You know, I say all of that to say that, you know, like what I said in the beginning, we're keeping a little bit of everybody's laws, right? And it's good to speak about it in an overarching type of way, and then you have to get specific so that, and I know we can't do it tonight because the time is short, but to get specific so that we can begin to unpack one thing at a time. Because, again, the conversation is just very broad. We went from feminism to, you know, to midwives, to doula, and, you know, and all of these spaces where we see that we've been affected. But I think going forward at another space in time, it's like, okay, I see Sister Ashanti brought up head wraps. Is it true? Is it false? Is it coming? You know what I'm saying? Does, like the sister who called in, does it predate the Greco-Roman? Are we short-sighted if we just stop there? This type of thing. So, like, at the end of the day, we have a direction to say, all right, boom. For instance, I mentioned the angry black woman and the independent black woman, and Sister Only Love came and made a comment concerning that. I would like to unpack that conversation. You see what I'm saying? And so I know that we are at the end of 2017, all praise be to the Most High. And so as we go forward, you guys, please use the email. Again, like Sister Miranda said, plug. Please use the email, under the palm, the number 2 @gmail.com, and let us know what conversations you would like us to unpack going forward so that we can kind of get a resolution one by one. So with that, hopefully I answered the question. I relinquish the mic.
Hallelujah. We're winding down now. We're already at the 10:21 mark. And so we're going to go to Only Love. And then after Only Love, we're going to have our closing thoughts on the matter. As I'm going to say, we will be back in 2018, but you're not distant from us. You're not cut off from us. You can use the emails to get at us. Just a reminder that unlike Under the Palm, Hebrew Women Speak, men are invited to the conversation right on the panel at the Relationship Challenge. So, brothers, if you're feeling a little left out when you come to Monday night and all the sisters are at the table and you're like, that's too many women for me, there's still TRC, the Relationship Challenge, and you're invited to not just call in, but have a seat and have some of the vegan meal that the Yummy Cottage will provide virtually at the table. So with that shameless plug already out there, Only Love, welcome back to the conversation.
Thank you. Shalom, ladies. Just real quick before I go into what I observed among the Ashanti people and how they honored the mothers around them, to speak about formal education, I would say some of the times when I felt brothers be the most oppressive was when it was brothers who were highly educated. So I'm one of those people, like a Kanye West song, too many degrees. And I think sometimes we assume the pushback may come from brothers who are not as quote-unquote formally educated, but everything really depends on your integrity and the spirit in which you walk with it. If someone has a spirit that's towards the Most High, they can have a doctorate, PhDs, and they will still be humble, and the information will still be useful for the community. Someone else can be self-taught, but if their spirit is humble, that will be useful for the community. But on the other hand, I've seen some people manipulate our community by uplifting not being formally taught, and I've seen some formally educated people at high levels, people whose names you've known, manipulate black masses through having that formal education. So to me, it's not lifting one over the other. I think if we're dedicated to the Most High, because the fear of Yah is the beginning of all wisdom, you can be self-taught and be used by the Most High, but you can also be someone who took the formal route, it's late, and be used by the Most High. It's basically all about our integrity and our spirit. So I just wanted to quickly offer that. I think a lot of times we assume that Black American culture is matriarchal, but I don't really think it is. We don't know what a matriarchy is because we really haven't been able to experience a patriarchy since we've gotten here. We've only been able to witness other people's. And I think sometimes we may think as Black American women we have more freedoms or more independence or more whatever, a better situation than what we do have, because you don't know what you don't know. If you've never really seen a mother be honored, you might have Big Mama and we give honor in that way, or you might think your family was matriarchal, or you might think your parents were egalitarian, but that may not have been the case. And I think sometimes you have to get out of your environment to really understand what you're living in. And when I was towards the end of my trip, I did go back to Ghana. And last year when I was there, the Queen Mother died. And the Queen Mother, there's many Queen Mothers in different sections of Ghana. And among the Ashanti, you become a king through your mother. If the king has a son, that son will not become king. It might be the sister of the king's son who becomes king. So you get your royalty, your lineage, everything through the maternal line. And if you ask almost any older Ashanti in the palace, anyone who's well known, even if they're not religious, and ask them where they migrated from, they're going to say Israel. And I have some videos on the Prophetic Whirlwind YouTube page of interviews of Ashanti people saying just that. And so I think many times we say, oh, in Israel we didn't have any queens, but that's actually not true. We actually did have queen mothers, and you can read about that in First Kings and Second Kings, in the book of Daniel. You can read about these queen mothers, and one of the, and I can't, Amuna and Mayana are going to have to help me, but the word is Gebhara, which literally means mistress, not like a side piece, but a woman who rules, the female ruler, or sometimes simply the wife of the king. And that word is found in 1 Kings 11:19, or in Daniel 5:10. The term is Melkatha, Melka, the queen, or really the mother of the king. And sisters can clean it up because I'm not the best with pronouncing words. I have to get better with that. But and there's an article that I posted on the Prophetic Whirlwind Instagram and Facebook page that goes over the Queen Mother and all the times it's mentioned in the Torah and then the Tanakh. Because I don't have time to go through the fact that, proof that Israel did have Queen Mothers. So last year the Queen Mother died. They had to take the Supreme Queen Mother. They took a year to find a new Supreme Queen Mother. This year when I went back, it just so happens they were celebrating her life. When I tell you from December 1st to December 14th, Kumasi, where the Ashanti Palace is, the Ashanti Kingdom, was shut down. My friend who owns a business there got an edict that anyone who was doing business on the day of her main funeral, though she was already buried last year, they would get a fine. He tried to have an employee open the business, and it got shut down. Major corporations like Guinness, like major Western corporations, were sponsoring the celebration of the Queen Mother's life. She lived to be 111 years old. All the hotels were booked. Everything was a celebration every day. People bringing gifts from all over, traveling from all over to honor this woman, including heads of state of other countries, including some European countries, were sending representatives to honor this Queen Mother, whether they let us know or not. And so all of this was done to honor the life of this black woman, this African-looking woman, and to know that, everything had to stop. I could not even take pictures of the king when he was in mourning. I ignorantly tried to and was told he can't even be photographed when he's mourning this woman. And that, now they have a new Queen Mother. And the Queen Mother, among the Ashanti, she is the only one who can check the king, who can embarrass him. I've heard from a Ga friend that if a man wants to be a spiritual leader, sometimes he will have more than one wife, because there is a belief that if you're praying for an answer, that Yah will actually speak to the women in your life. And so some men feel like, let me have more than one just for that purpose. Not saying that's right or wrong, but just trying to show the mentality where if you live in a culture where you cannot come into your being a king, or you cannot even properly hear from Yah without having a woman by your side. That is a very different culture than what we have been in. And again, sometimes you don't know what you've lost until you actually see it. Because I thought about all the imams that we do have, all the elderly women, my grandmother who took me out of foster care, and, you know, they are almost like queen mothers in our community. But I don't know if we really understand how to honor them. And honor is a bedrock of Hebrew culture. And the brothers among the Ashanti are very strong. You had a whole bunch of brothers who were warriors with huge guns. Like, these were not emasculated men of note. I mean, they were shooting guns to honor her. And I'm from Brooklyn, so I almost dropped to the floor. But there were strong men all around. And it took nothing from their manhood to honor this woman. And many people say the Ashanti are a Hebrew tribe. So I just wanted to lift that up because that's very different than Greco-Roman culture. I don't know if the Greeks and Romans had queen mothers. And so I really wish that I could have taken every black woman I knew to be at those events to celebrate that woman's life, because it was just very humbling, and it made you want to be better as a black woman, being around the other queen mothers and seeing how dignified they carried themselves because they knew the weight of the nation rested on them.
Hallelujah. And I wanted to say that I appreciate having Only Love on this panel because she's able to contribute this kind of this level of texture to the conversation, because very often when we think of the continent, we think Hamite, and we think that it's like one block, one people, one culture, one language, and it's not that. And so very often this kind of preconceived idea, this prejudgment of the continent also informs how we address our culture and the laws, and in a way creates a new obstacle to us completing the puzzle. And we talk very often about all of us have a piece of the puzzle. We talk very often about there being this scattering and this diaspora, and we then somehow discount the continent and all of these people who, again, have this oral tradition that goes back and spans generations upon generations, where they have remained connected, and there's this, they have this connectivity to their kinship and to their heirship and to their inheritance that we have developed through the written word, and having to decode certain things and unpack certain things to put things together for us, and which they don't have. They don't have this volume of work that has been and it's in an anthology the way that we have it. Instead, they're depending on these oral traditions, and so there's a difference. But in some ways, it's better because they don't have to worry about who put it together, in what order, who translated it, and all these variations. I mean, even the versions of the text that we have, there isn't just one version, because all of the Euros had to have their fingers in it, thinking that their translation is better than the other Euro who just translated it. And so we struggle, like here in the West, we struggle to find out which interpretation, which version, who got it the closest, as we're learning to parse through the Hebrew. And I'll turn it over to Amuna and the Imas to give the better pronunciation of the Gavera and the Malaka or Malka. It's a better Hebrew, because even I am not that well versed in the Hebrew yet. I've been studying Korean, all kinds of other things that I should have been studying when I could have been doing my Hebrew homework. So that's a little disclosure there, studying all the languages I should not be studying. But anyway, so we have that. We have this, that we have sisters like Imuna and sisters like Only Love who have been to the continent and to the land and can bring back those pieces that we don't have and allow us to not be so closed-minded. We have been, a lot of this information that we need to be against the continent hasn't come from us,
Because if you notice, usually when we have leaders that rise up and get shot down by the FBI, but when they start to rise up, they start telling us to look back at the continent. I don't know how interesting anybody else finds that, but as soon as someone actually emerges from our ranks and starts to lead a movement, they leave here to go and find other pieces. But then there's this narrative that comes back and reminds us, yeah, but they sold you. They don't like you. How do you think you got here? They didn't even fight for you. And then we're like, yeah, that's right. And they never came for us. And we start to adopt that worldview again. We're like, that's right. Mind you, how you that right? You don't remember. You wasn't on that boat. You don't know how that went down. But we start to accept. And then say, you know what, that's right. For real? You don't know. And then you have the people on the continent saying, that's not completely right. And now we don't want to listen because we've been sitting on Santa's lap for so long being told the fairy tale. And that's what it is. So I'm not telling you what worldview you need to adopt, but I am going to tell you that for me, there's merit in evaluating things and asking questions so that you come to a conclusion that is yours and not one that has been prepackaged and given to you under the Christmas tree with the mistletoe and the Santa sock or whatever they got going on. I don't know. There's always something new. So, like I said, we're going to wind down, wrap it up. We're not even on air anymore. But these final thoughts are going around the table for the listening audience and for those that will listen later. These are the things that we're going to continue to parse through. Like I said, Moon and I have homework to do. The sisters have to get some sleep. We lost Sister Malaka. She's ready to go to sleep already with her ginger tea and her tincture and whatever else she needs to do to get back into good health. So when we pray out, we're going to remember our Sister Malaka's health. I've learned that one of the sisters that are very close to me, that's an elder in our community, is very ill. They're working against her body right now. Her spirit is strong, her soul is strong, her connection to the Creator is strong, but there are attacks on her body right now. So we're going to pray for her health. We will remember Sister Ami's granddaughter in health, and whoever else is hurting and need, be it physical, be it whether or not you are struggling in your homes with your husbands or with your wives or with that family member who just doesn't understand what you are doing, or if you are going to work and your coworkers don't understand you anymore, if you're feeling lost and you're feeling alone in any way, we keep you in our prayers tonight and remind you that there is a sisterhood. Now, mind you, when I say sisterhood, I'm not talking to just women. Brothers, guess what? We're your sisters. So when we say we're building up our sisters, our sister status, that's to you too. We're your sisters. We're not trying to excommunicate you from the community. We're not trying to create an all-woman kind of little commando thing over here because we understand, maybe more than you do, that where there's no masculine and feminine energy working together, no creating is happening. We cannot say we're going to build a nation. We cannot do it by our onesies. Two women together do not create life. Two men together do not create life. We need to have the masculine and feminine principle on the same page, creating this life. Because this is not our belief. This is our life. And if our life is on the line, we need to get together. All right, so that's my soapbox. I'm going to step down. It's getting a little slippery up here on my soapbox. I'm going to step down. Final thoughts. Malaka's not here. We'll pick her with Ashanti and go right down the panel and then end in our evening prayer. And thank you to Sal once again. I'm sure everybody wants to give their final salutations, and thank you to Sal. So starting with Sister Ashanti, whatever your last thoughts are, the floor is yours.
I want to say thank you to the ladies and sisters there. Thank you to Sal, and thank you to the Debate Talk for You audience for listening to Under the Palm Hebrew Women Speak. It has been an humbling honor to be a part of this panel. I'm going to miss us until we meet again in the new secular year. I have Sister Angela on the line. if she wants to say something briefly, she can, and then I'll go.
Oh, Shalom, sis. I just want to say thank you for this awesome experience again. The panel with the Palm for this season. It's really wonderful. I look forward to what's going to happen in the future. It's going to unfold. Thank you, Sal, Showtime, for the platform. I appreciate your vision, that you had the vision to extend the opportunity to the sisters. From what I understand, there's a movement going on of, like Sister Mayana said, the sisterhood. And the sisterhood is not about the sisters, it's about all of us, like we've been saying all night. The women of it have always been about nation building. So thank you. I love you all. And shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom, dear.
Thank you.
This is Ashanti. And isn't it it's so cool. My actual name is Ashanti. I was named after that tribe. And that is really
Queen
right.
Mother.
It's really awesome because having that name as a child, it was like I was looked at as like, not having an American name. So it had me look into the history, and then, coming into this space had me looking more into the history. And I'm like, wow. My dad, who named me, never probably really knew. But I thank the Father for the age of information that I'm in it. My closing thoughts. my closing thoughts. Sister Naomi, Sister Yehudith, you are the Imahot, you are the mothers, and I appreciate mothers like you getting on. I for one have been learning a lot from you, beautiful women that I've never met physically, but just your spirit and the way you talk and the way you carry yourself. I've learned a lot, and I want to do my best to try to carry on some of that. I'm one of the young sisters out here. I know I got a hip hop feel to me, but
we all hip it up, trust me.
Right?
All right now.
But the things that you guys want to help us sisters carry on with some of the things that we picked up from our ancestors' culture with the women, such as gardening, farming, which is engineering, cooking, cleaning, crocheting, sewing, and all that stuff. I'm definitely more so getting into that myself. So thank you, and that's I'm saying that to say that's how we can help rid ourselves of these so-called Euro-Gentile laws we're following and we're trying to impress upon the scriptures. Surround ourselves with highly educated women who have been in this culture for quite some time, and also the men, to our brothers. I want to say, if you haven't heard him, please check out Rabbi Akwete. That's a powerful, righteous man in the Most High Yah, and he actually brings to light a lot of understanding of the role that we as women, we as theirs, we as that aid in the time of distress are created for. And I want to also encourage the brothers to, look at slavery and look at the time of slavery, look at the time when we were freed and see what customs our ancestors took on. Because if our people were stripped of their deity, their diet, their language, their culture, their name, then we had to have a culture from somewhere. And we really got to get back to it. So thank you once again. Debate Talk for You audience. Thanks for all who called in and your input. Also, my YouTube channel, like I said, 916 Sean. I do talk a lot about where these things come from. And I also give out book references as well in those videos. So, hallelujah. Almost praise to the Most High.
What's the name of the rabbi again? What's the name of the rabbi again?
Rabbi Akwete.
Say it again, Rabbi.
Akwete. And he's from Ghana. I'll give you the information, Ima. I know we know Rabbi Quincy very well. He was on the relationship challenge as his schedule allowed, so we haven't gotten a chance to touch base with him. But we do have I'll let you know all about him and how to get it started. All right, then. Hallelujah. Amuna, are you there?
You already know what Amuna's going to say. Yeah, but I'm to the Most High. As I said, great conversation. Hopefully we'll pick it up on the other side. Most High bless our life, spare our life. As we continue to, I think, I would say prepare our hearts and minds. No one wants to really come to a space and be like, I'm wrong. You know what I'm saying? I'm repping something that's wrong. So we all have, to a certain degree, this, as we heard earlier, investment in whatever our narrative is. But I believe I heard Malaka say, as long as you're willing to grow, you see, when we have these discussions, I think it's most beneficial because you have people who realize that I don't know it all. And the problem comes in when we have teachings from people in spaces that lean on their own understanding and proclaim like they know it. And so when we go into those spaces, it's hard to humble down. You understand what I'm saying? So all praise be to the Most High. I give thanks for these type of opportunities for Debate Talk for You, for all the elders and the sisters and the listening audience who come week after week. And you're going to miss us, but we have, a lot of episodes that if you just found out about the things that we've been doing, you have, 2 seasons worth of homework that was sure to keep you busy for the next month. And so definitely go ahead and check out those on Under the Palm, the YouTube channel, as well as Debate Talk for You. And hopefully you'll be doing your own studies, your own research, and be bringing your information to the table. So with that said, I pray everybody have a blessed night. And tune in on Wednesday as we have a very interesting conversation.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. That's right. We are just a reminder to the listening audience. We will be back this Wednesday, although this is the end of Ladies' Night, Monday nights being Ladies' Night on Debate Talk for You. We will come back on Wednesday to discuss a book that has been written creatively about the community. It's entitled Barack Obama versus the Black Hebrew Israelites. And we're going to have a conversation with the author regarding the content of that book. You're all invited to call in. There are links that you must go to because this is a conversation that is only open to those that have read the book or have some idea of the content of the book. Just general complaints or general grievances about the author will not be aired, would not be accepted. That is going to be very strictly adhered to. So if you're excited about the conversation, we invite you to listen in or to log in to www.blogtalkradio.com/debate talk for you. In fact, I'll take this moment to encourage you to, if you're not going to call in and ask a question to the author related to the book, but you do want to listen in, to use your devices rather than your phones so that we can allow for those who want to talk to get through. Very often, even with our TRCs and UTP conversations, the phone lines become burdened, and people that want to ask questions are not able to call in because our listeners are holding down the lines, all of whom we appreciate tremendously. So we're not trying to discourage you from listening in, but wherever possible, if you can listen on your other devices and allow the phone lines to be open, the Skype lines to be open, that is amazing. We appreciate it. Unfortunately, the Blog Talk Radio platform they limit us in how many people we can have on at any given time. So we just want to kind of put that out there, that if you're going to listen in, to try to log in if you don't need to call in. We have plenty of time. Time won't be an issue, so if you're concerned that it'll cut you off if you're on your devices, Sal has thought about that, considered that, made the proper accommodations so you don't have to worry about missing a moment. And, again, that's this coming Wednesday, and it is going to be on Debate Talk for You. and it's at 8 p.m. East, 5 PST. You guys can calculate all of the other time zones to figure out what time we'll be on. And then Amuna and I will be on again. Another platform will advertise that and discuss where you can find us the following Wednesday. Amuna and I are always touching something, so we won't be completely gone. It's very hard for us to be idle, so don't worry about it. With that said, I'm going to allow, how did I do? We did Ashanti, Malaka. It's Only Love's turn. Only Love. What are your final thoughts?
First, I want to just praise y'all for the opportunity to just share with this people and also learn. I just want to thank Sal for having one of the few Hebrew platforms that really uplifts the women and actually has the women speaking for themselves. Many people are, I support the sisters, but really actions speak louder than words. And Sal definitely put his actions into supporting the sisters this season. And I want to thank you, Mayana and Amuna, just for all that you do, all that you put out, your academic articles that remind me of school, and just really being passionate about helping the sisters navigate this walk. And this panel is more than just a panel. I really feel like it's a sisterhood. And so I thank all the panelists. I feel like if I had prayers or something was happening with my family, everyone on the panel would step up. And so I'm grateful for that. And then I definitely want to shout out our resident queen mothers, the imams who have been with us. It's really humbling, but it also is a blessing and a privilege for you to be with us. You even came to the one of you came to the meet and greet with us, and so you know that you're not looking down on us, but you're encouraging us in this walk. And so those, I just am really appreciative of this panel and just how welcoming everyone has been. And I would just say if anyone wants to see more pictures and videos from the time that I spent with Hebrews in Nigeria and Ghana, you can go to propheticwhirlwind.com on Facebook and YouTube. On YouTube, there's actually some video messages where two Nigerian Hebrew brothers break down the role of the Daughters of Zion and really put it out there with how important the Daughters of Zion are. So with that, I'll just say shalom and good night, and I'll see you all on Wednesday. And I'm praying for our time together on Wednesday.
All right, Lalatov. My fault. We kept promising you that we're going to keep it short, but we're going to actually get cut off in exactly 8 minutes. So I just wanted the Imahot and Amuna to know, so they'll get cut off midstream. We have 8 minutes left, 7 minutes left. So, Amuna, take it away. Your last thoughts.
Oh, hallelujah! All praise be to the Most High. May everybody have a blessed night.
I can always count on Imuna. All right. Imuna Yehuda, your last thoughts.
Yes, I love everybody on this panel. Thank you for the opportunity for me to speak. Yes, especially the sisters. You keep studying. I like what I'm hearing. Shalom, shalom. Lalatov.
We'll talk to you privately off the air. Imana, we can always count on you to pray us out. What are your last thoughts? Remember, we only have a few minutes left on the air, so we want to get all of that prayer in. What are your last thoughts, Ima?
All praise to the Most High. I'm just so glad for this movement. I'm so glad for you and Amuna and all the sisters who contribute, and I just enjoyed myself so tremendously yesterday. I'm telling you, I can't wait for the next sisterhood meeting. I really can't.
We had actually a question came in. Unfortunate. What we will do, I'll read the question to you, and we'll give our thoughts probably in the comments. But one of our sisters asked, how do we continue to evolve with modernity while holding on to our culture? And that's an excellent question. I think it sounds like a great topic for 2018. It would probably be a disservice to try to tackle it at the 11th hour. So instead, the sister that gave us this question, she actually called in earlier. She put how to evolve. How do we continue to evolve in modernity while holding on to our culture? We don't really have the time to answer that on the air, but I think it's a great question. So those that will hear it later on the YouTube, if you want to weigh in on that question, and maybe let us know if you want to hear a whole show on that, because that sounds like a topic to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like a topic.
We had sisters at the meeting ask those same questions and talk about the challenges that we're facing in our contemporary context, trying to preserve our culture. So, again, I wanted the question to be heard live, and everybody's invited to weigh in. And I think that might be how we open up 2018, sis. I'm sorry that we couldn't get you on the line to get the answer. But absolutely, you can, if you want an answer from us now, contact us. We will definitely talk to you. Again, I apologize for not being able to answer you on the air. We have 5 minutes left, and so I'll keep it brief. To the Most High, to the Imas. My appreciation and my love to all the sisters that have rocked with me all the way through. This is the very first time I've gotten to host here, and so the love and the support and the encouragement of the panel, the Imas, the listening audience, and everyone, I totally appreciate it. You've made Under the Palm Hebrew Women Speak a valuable part of the community. You have given us such positive responses. The brothers that came through and called in, the brothers that have pulled us aside privily to encourage us, we are so thankful to you. We appreciate you. We know we're very, very humbled by the fact that if not for the support and the encouragement of our brothers, this would be a much harder path to row. And we have to acknowledge our big sister show, the Relationship Challenge. Amuna was a pioneer in this area by the grace that and the opportunity that our brother Sal gave her. So if not for the Relationship Challenge, UTP would have had a much harder path to have these conversations and these community conversations. So we want to give proper due and thank you to Amuni Israel as well for the success of TRC. Of course, all praise due to the Most High for all of these things. I don't want to give anything to our own accomplishments. But anyway, again, thank you very much. And Laila Tov, Shalom.
Laila Tov, are we praying out?
Yeah,
we can go praying out.
Yes, please. Okay. We have 3 minutes. My fault.
What is the name of the elder sister that we are praying for? What is her name that we're praying for wellness?
Mariah.
Okay, very well. Okay, very well. All right, everybody in prayer position right quick. We're going to try to make this quick. Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam Elohei Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak Israel. Torah Rabbah for this gathering, this wonderful gathering of sisters. Please let it continue, O Yah, that we might become unified and we might become one with another, O Yah, as we strive in our return to build up our nation, to build our families, to build ourselves, to build our nation, to help our men, be true helpmeets for them, and to be, of course, the mothers of an everlasting nation. We ask that you would be with all of us, be with all of our families. We ask a special blessing at this time for Sister Mariah. We ask a special blessing for Sister Evelyn. We ask a special blessing for Ima Ayalut. We ask a special blessing for all of those who are sick of one thing or another. We ask a special blessing for Skylar Rodriguez. She is the granddaughter or the great-granddaughter of Sister Wendy. We ask, oh, yeah, that you would be with all of our families, all of our sisters, all of our brothers, all of those who are suffering of one thing or another, whether it be economic, psychological, physical, emotional, and all the ways that we suffer, oh, yeah, we ask that you would be with us. We thank thee, oh, yeah, for our very lives and for the lives of our people, and ask that you would be with Israel wherever they may be scattered throughout the length and breadth of this earth. Please, oh, yeah, remember all of us and continue thy blessings, thy mercies, thy compassion, and thy loving kindness towards us, thy people.